I mean,
It's
that's a
nuts.
time commitment. 4 days, yeah, that's crazy. Especially if you just end up having just a tie ultimately at the end of that. I feel like that wouldn't work for Americans in particular. But Chris, you know what is working for
What's
Americans?
working?
Project Hail Mary is.
Oof. What did you think of it then? Can we go straight in on what do you think of it, or shall we wait 30 seconds until it reaches
Nah,
5
let's
o'clock?
go straight in. We got some people joining in the chat. I know that there's some people watching from YouTube side. Let's start talking about Project Hail Mary. We'll ultimately return to it and we can speak to what we thought. But, initial thoughts, and I'll be honest, going into this movie, I don't think I was nearly as excited as everybody else was. Not that my expectations and anticipation was not low. I was excited for a good time. And the fact that reviews were coming in, I did not see this opening night. It came out, that Friday, and I almost saw it nearly 1 week after. I just saw this last Thursday to add context. So there was a lot of time to see the reviews come in, to see the excitement. This was not one of those films, and I'm quite shocked that I didn't try to see it opening night. I really do try to see everything that excites me within the opening weekend. And you know what I think really framed maybe not the near amount of excitement as everyone else was The Martian. A lot of people loved The Martian, and I
Mm.
believe Andy Weir also wrote that original book, and Ridley Scott obviously directed the film. And people since that film have been talking about wanting another Andy Weir book adapted for screen. And I know a lot of people loved The Martian, and that's not even a slight to the film. I will admit, I saw that in theaters twice. I have not seen it since it was released back in 2014. So it's been
Yeah.
over a decade. So I don't even want to necessarily give an honest review, but I didn't love the movie at the time it came out. I felt that it was, I don't even remember what I felt. Maybe it was a bit contrived. I don't know. But there was something that ultimately didn't click with that film. Maybe it was Matt Damon. Who knows? And I think because of that and where I was left off with all of those years ago, hearing, hey, this is from the same writer of The Martian, the book that is, and this is an adaptation of a really awesome film. And I'll be honest, I think the directors as well, based on their body of work, again, I love 21 Jump Street. I love some of the other films that they did, but it's always weird when you see these directors do these type of jumps. But now after
Yeah.
seeing the film, I actually can better understand why this was such an awesome next step for them, because a lot of the core tenets that they developed in their earlier work were still here, but in a
Mhm.
far more refined way. So to kind of to boil down what ultimately I felt from this film is I went in excited, didn't have the biggest expectations in the world, and was really blown away by a film that understood what its goal was. It never jumped the shark per se. It's a sci-fi film, so there is of course a suspension of belief when watching something like this movie, but I think
Mhm.
for what it tried to speak to thematically, I think purely on the soul level, the way that it makes you feel as an audience member, this understanding of hope, especially at a time where the world's so tense right now. It really was fun to step away and just have a moment of like pure escapistic cinema. And it definitely had like deepness and depth to it. I don't want to completely disregard that component, but just
Mhm.
from like being an audience member, not even being a filmmaker, not being a cinephile, it was a fun and enjoyable movie to watch. And I think that's probably one of the best things you could say about that at a time where it's really easy to kind of be lost in the dread. So, but I want to hear what you thought.
I thought the same. I mean, one of the things I really liked, I heard a phrase that my friend used, but I think probably the directors used it as well, was hope core, right? That's what they called this movie, hope core. And there is a real feeling of hope and optimism throughout this movie. And I really like that about it. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of things like Interstellar. I absolutely love Interstellar. It's one of the best movies of all time. I love 2001: A Space Odyssey. I love these different movies that have got like a lot more um dread in them, I suppose is the best way to describe it. But then this one was just nice, and maybe that's because the protagonist, maybe Ryland Grace and Ryan Gosling are one in the same, and they're absolutely great to watch, and they're a lot. You kind of find yourself rooting for them. But yeah, it was just a really nice movie. And don't get me wrong, I like The Martian. And I like the kind of humor in The Martian that was kind of this guy that's on his own and all he can do is kind of crack jokes about himself being a space pirate and stuff like that. I also love Ridley Scott and I'll always go to bat for him. even with Napoleon I did. But, like, you know, um, yeah, I really love this movie. I love the look of it. I sat there, I watched it in IMAX 70 mil, with my wife and was just blown away. There was points at times in this movie, and I've got, like, a presentation which I've done a bunch of research into how they shot it and stuff, but, like, there were just moments in this movie where I just kind of sat back and was just like, "This is great. What a great movie." There was moments
Mhm.
where I cried over a rock, you know? Like, there was just some real brilliant bits in this film that made me go back and go, "I really like that." Another one, the soundtrack, and I'm not just talking about Daniel Pemberton's score, which I think's fantastic and one of the best scores I've heard in the past 10 years, but I also mean, like, the soundtrack itself, the choices of music. There was a Beatles track in there. There was one that was called Pata Pata, when the montage, when they're, in the lows and they're throwing tapes around and getting wood and stuff like that. Like, Pata Pata is an awesome tune that I encountered on, like, a funk album years and years ago, and there it was used in a very quick montage, but it was cool as hell. I thought that everything like that was really, really well done, and these guys, like you said, I'd only experienced them in 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street. I'm not sure what they did with the Spider-Man films, maybe somebody can tell me.
They
They
were the
definitely did.
writers. They
They were
were
the
the writers
writers?
and producers. I thought that they were the directors as
Me
well, which I
too.
thought was cool that they went from directing that, but no, they were the producers and writers, so they still very much helped conceptualize the film. But something I
Yeah.
wanna add to the importance of, I think, needle drops in 2026 and why they're becoming so prominent in cinema is music right now due to social media. Social
Mhm.
media utilizes needle drops in a multitude of ways. Think about the reels, the content in which we consume it. A lot of it is driven by music. And I think
Mm.
movies are realizing that also the soundtrack, the original soundtrack, the score, or the needle drops within the film make for such an awesome mixtape to actually carry the movie on outside of just watching it in the traditional sense of a theater
True.
and then ultimately in streaming. We see that with so many movies where they'll release, here's the mixtape from Project Hail Mary, get it now on Spotify, Apple TV, is a way to be able to continue to fill out someone's catalog to then
Mhm.
reference back to this film. So I do think that maybe they weren't thinking like about it in that sense, but the
Mm.
importance of music today in movies is really awesome.
I'm with you on that, and I think you're absolutely right. I think, by the way, they got this needle drop absolutely spot on. Like, every single one was absolutely nailed on this, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? But there's been some great ones this year as well. I have to throw out, like, One Battle After Another was the best needle drops, I think, for the past 12 months. Awesome.
I would say
You know what I
so.
mean? Dirty
Hmm.
Work, that bit when it cuts straight to her being like a teenager and she's in the karate class, exceptional work. And American Girl as well. Just wanted to throw that out since we're talking needlework, but needle drops. But yeah, Sweeney, um, we tried selling this one with our own bit of social sort of stuff. I created this nice, definitely not AI uh, shot of us two in our Ryland Grace outfits. Do you like how I put like a British flag on mine and American one on yours, just so they
I
knew who was
loved it.
who?
Yeah, I
Right?
love that.
I mean, the film hand logo got a little bit of a mess there. When we do our hats, we'll have to make sure that they put that white line in there because they've messed that bit up. But other than that, I was quite proud of that one. I thought it was good.
I
And
love
then, yeah,
that.
I'd say this one here. Look at this, right? I've got a new computer, so it means the processing speed's quicker, which means I can now play you guys from my presentations. I can now play you things that are video like, so it's not going to throw me off like it did last week. This was probably the best shot of the movie, and we're gonna go into how they did this because American cinematographer just did an amazing interview with Greg Fraser, the God, Greg Fraser. For God's sake, my God, that guy. The Batman I thought was one of the best looking movies I'd ever seen. Then Dune was one of the best looking movies I'd ever seen. Then Dune 2 was one of the best looking movies I'd ever seen. And now this, it's like Greg Fraser is cooking. And I absolutely love that guy. You know what I mean?
I
Like
didn't
I
even
can't
know he shot this leading up to it. I
it's
was blown
amazing.
away when someone, I think it was Patrick Tomaso on his
Mm,
social medias, was talking about Greg Fraser shooting Project Hail Mary. And obviously, he implemented that process that he developed with Dune and ultimately refined it and built upon it for this film. It's crazy how, one, I didn't realize that this is potentially what took Greg Fraser out of Dune in particular as well.
Yeah.
was this production probably did not allow, or maybe there's something else that Greg Fraser's working on right now that took him out. But it is cool to see his progression, especially when you think of his earlier work.
Yeah.
Zero Dark 30. Amazing Catherine Bigelow film, which really put Greg Fraser on the map for that nighttime sequence that's in the latter part of the film when they
Mhm.
go in with the Navy SEALs. Talk about, I recently revisited that movie, and if you need to see Greg Fraser outside of working on the largest canvas possible, some of his earlier works are absolutely incredible. And that shot in particular only underscores or underlines that he is one of the best contemporary filmmakers today. Like, it's insane.
It's bonkers, honestly. And what am I right in thinking, Tweens? Like he and Oren Sofer both shot The Creator, right? They were both
Mhm.
involved in shooting The Creator as well, which was lower budget but like high visuals. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
so the
it,
way that that operated, Chris, was because
mm,
Oren, he's a great
you
friend of
talked to him, didn't you?
Filmmakers
Yeah.
Academy, and yeah, and honestly, Oren's become like a very awesome like colleague and someone that I've gotten the pleasure of knowing. And essentially, to my understanding, what happened is Greg was supposed to shoot that film.
Hmm.
Then ultimately, I think he did get pulled into Dune, but he still wanted to oversee that production with Gareth Edwards. I think it was
Right.
Gareth Edwards that
Yeah.
directed that. And he brought in Oren to essentially operate on the ground, and Greg would call in through video call and help oversee the production. But a lot of it was done by Oren as well. So there was this mutual collaboration of them building the look. And I don't want
Mhm.
to get caught into the weeds of who took what part because, of course, I was not a part of that production. But to at least
Yeah.
my understanding, they collaborated on it together. Then Oren really executed it on the day with Gareth and bringing this production to life. I'm not sure if Greg ultimately came to set any of the days that he had available, but I know he was tied up in another production during the principal photography, at least to my understanding.
Yeah. Well, either way, another sci-fi film that he was involved in, at least. You know what I mean? And it seems like, I mean, I've got loads in this presentation about him, um, that he was doing and stuff, but like some of the techniques that we're going to discuss in this podcast, you know, that he used and his team used, and the things that they developed in order to capture this shot in particular, it just boggles the mind. It's brilliant, you know. Like when I looked at like things that I just loved about this, I could just sit and just print these off and put them on my wall. They're amazing.
Hmm.
You know, like this one. Actually, you can see down here. You've actually got the IMAX crowd in there watching it. You know, this like, I suppose it's Rocky's Planet, innit? We don't worry about spoilers on this. If anybody's not seen it, go and see it before you listen to any more of our podcast. But like, you know, like this was Rocky's sort of exoplanet or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was called, Elerium or something like that, whatever it was called, right? But um, these shots were just absolutely mesmerizing.
Hmm.
You know, just mind blowing. I don't like figuring out how they shot this when they talk about no green screen as well, is another thing that we're gonna dive into on this. They didn't shoot this with any green screen, which is just again, in today's age, that's definitely something surprising, you know, it's given the fact that what Peter Jackson was using green screen for the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, what, 20 years ago? You know what I mean? 25 years ago. We're now talking about how these guys weren't even using it. Um, and well done to VFX as well for their involvement in this film as well, you know, because clearly VFX artists were involved in this, but yeah, exceptional shots. Let's talk a little bit about Andy Weir, the guy who created this. You talked about seeing The Martian before, and
Hmm.
uh, I dived into this because I wanted to know, where did this guy come from? Actually, fascinating story. Here he is. This is Andy Weir right here. Fascinating story, and I had to put some of it on the side here just so that I could remember it. He was a programmer, computer programmer from AOL, very, very clever chap, engineering mind, you know, so you can kind of see lots of Ryland Grace within him. He was laid off by AOL in the 90s, and he had all this money set aside so that he could allow himself to go and be a hobbyist and go and be involve himself, go and engage with his hobby of writing. And he wrote The Martian, and he built up this kind of like online following for his ebooks and for his stories, that he managed to put this on Amazon for the lowest possible price, which was 99 cents. And he was making 30 cents on each one. And over 6 months, he sold 35,000 copies, and at that point, Random House, the publisher, came on board, but they weren't gonna publish him prior to this. So he actually had to go out there and find it himself, you know what I mean? And actually go out and build his own audience, things like that. So for any independent filmmakers out there, anybody who desperately wants to kind of be their own writer, director, which I know a lot of people who follow us do, and a lot of people who are out here in LA right now desperately do, and I know that you and I do. This guy, Andy Weir, is definitely a great example of somebody who wrote something, built an audience for it, put it out on Amazon for the lowest possible price or just for anything, just to be able to build up something. And then these were the things that he was generating. These were the kind of views that he was generating. These were the purchases he was generating to be able to prove himself and say, hey, look, clearly people love this book. And it is the book that's based on it. We were talking about this before, like books driving box office. And this was something you and I were really kind of talking about just before we got on as something we wanted to talk about. You know,
Mhm.
this book already had a massive following. I was talking about it to somebody because um full disclosure really, I was asked in 2024 when they were filming this, late 2024, sort of November, December time, I was asked to write taglines for this movie, that they could use or not. It's up to them when they get them. But usually, when I'm asked to write taglines, I write them when they're filming the movie so they can take the protagonist or take whoever to one side and get pictures with them, that would go with that tagline or would go with that, for that movie poster. I'm usually writing them at the same time as they're preparing to do marketing. So when we did Mountainhead, for example, for HBO Max, they were literally up the mountain filming them, and I was sending taglines over for them to okay or and deciding before they took the pictures of the guys of such Steve Carell and Jason Schwartzman and all them stood up this mountain. You know what I mean? So for this one, I was coming up with taglines back in England in sort of November, December 2024. My mum was in hospital, so I was reading the script. I think I was reading bits of the script. I was reading parts of the synopsis and stuff like this. And then we were coming up with, you know, 4 or 5 words to try and sell this. And it's a very difficult thing to sell because there is a massive twist in there that's rocky. This alien we are doing spoilers, aren't we? Right? The
Yeah, this
alien
is
come
spoilers.
right. He meets this alien while he's out there, and they end up collaborating uh in order to save Earth and save the universe from what is like a algae that is eating stars and causing daylight to die. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's the story. We were told to stay away from it and to make sure don't mention about Rocky. And then sure enough, we get to the trailers and everything, and the marketing's got Rocky right in there, like 15th second in or something like that. And I know there was a lot of people who were saying we're not happy about that. Like a lot of people who were big fans of the book who were saying that's basically, the main twist in the story. It's kind of like giving that away is like a real, you know, pain. What do you
And I
think? What do
think
you
that
think?
was the first time that I was nervous about this film. And I want to get into some of the stuff about you writing taglines and also
Yeah.
why I think books are making so much impact at the box office right now. But speaking to um speaking to essentially what we were just saying, sorry, you were talking about
Marketing and then
yeah,
revealing Rocky and everything
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
revealing Rocky. Yeah. So I remember when the trailer came out, and that was a while ago now. A lot of people were really upset, and I'll admit I did not read the book, so I did not know the reveal. But everyone said one of the best parts of reading the book was
Mhm.
ultimately having Rocky surface as a character and what becomes the core collaborator of Ryan
Mhm.
Gosling's character in this relationship that births out of it, which is very emblematic of like that of a human and a dog, something that does not live as a human's like a human, and then there's obviously a different type of animal, and people are really upset about that. And that was the first time I was like, ooh, this movie is likely not going to be good because of the marketing efforts right now. That
Mhm.
seems like a big L, and that's coming from someone who really didn't care. And what's really funny, speaking to the taglines, and I don't even know if you can actually talk about some of the taglines that you did right. I will admit that I think this movie, for as great as it is, has one of the worst taglines
Yep.
I have ever seen put on a poster. It's as if they wanted the title to be said twice in the
Yeah.
poster. And for those, I'm going to pull up an example. I don't know if you have an example. But the fact that the tagline ultimately became, and I want to hear some that you pitched, believe in the Hail Mary.
Yeah,
I don't know.
terrible,
It's
terrible. Not
awful.
mine, not mine. I think that it was an offshoot of mine. I wrote, "Believe in a higher power" was my one. That was the one of the first ones that I pitched. But yeah, the fact that they went with "Believe in the Hail Mary," I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose it's fine, but and they also had, I think that they tried to do a lot of marketing promo that was
Mhm.
about, you know, him doing a Hail Mary action. Like, one was, like, when he was on Jeopardy, and he just said something that was, like, a random thing out of the blue, and he won it, and it
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, yeah, believe in the Hail Mary." So I suppose it worked with the way they were gonna market it, but yeah, it wasn't my chosen one, I'll be honest.
And if you live in Los Angeles, they actually have some really awesome billboards along Sunset where I live. There's a billboard of a
Yeah, they do.
wire with like Ryan Gosling's character like holding on. So I will admit, outside of the trailer debacle, which ultimately I think only helped sell the movie, even though
Mm,
maybe it didn't work for the people that loved the book. I think showcasing Rocky is what brought in the younger audiences, the family audiences that
mm,
potentially grew up loving movies like E.T. or things that they knew, okay, I as an adult am going to appreciate this film. And if I have kids that would also love a sci fi film, that's for everyone. This
mm,
film targeted that and did that so well. So, despite what the book audience ultimately was disappointed by, I only think it only served to help the film and the larger marketing push that they ultimately went with, which I will say on a collective level was really strong. And I want to
yeah.
go back to what you were talking about with the book, and I'll stop sharing this now.
No, you're
Is
good.
right now in theaters, a lot of the movies that are finding the most success are the ones that have a built-in audience that are going to be
Correct.
just as excited, and that is coming from the book audience right now. We saw that most recently. What was it? The Maid, or not The Handmaid, or was it called The Handmaid?
Housemaid.
The
Sydney
Housemaid.
Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried. Yeah.
Yeah, that was super successful and one of Paul like Feig's biggest box office hits. I know Reese Witherspoon with her book club and her production company has been doing an awesome job all the way back through the HBO series like Sharp Objects to the other films that
Flight
she's been.
Attendant she did, didn't
f-
she? Wasn't that one of
Yeah,
hers?
yeah,
Yeah.
with Haley Cuoco.
I've
Yeah.
got an inside on that, by the way, just to jump in. The Reese
Mm-hmm.
Witherspoon book club thing is one of the cleverest pieces of, I don't know what you call it, talent spotting or getting, you know, being able to option a script or anything I've heard in Hollywood. And I know this because there was a girl who I knew who used to work for Reese Witherspoon. And apparently the way that she did it was she has this book club, and when she brings these books into her book club and represents them for her book club, there is an option on the table for a nominal amount for her to get first option or first refusal on that book as a script to make the screenplay of it. So obviously every book in her book club, she's then just seeing what does well in the book club, what do audiences want, and then is then getting somebody to write the screenplay of that book that performs best in her book club. So it's actually a genius way. Like, these book clubs, I wish there were more people doing them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or certainly doing things, even you could do ebooks, something whereby you can find the best. I know right now, Artist Equity, uh the Matt Damon, Ben Affleck company, they've started
Mm-hmm.
doing, screenplay, getting screenwriters in and doing an incubator, and that's all well and good, but I think that one's actually through agents being passing on your stuff. So again, it's not
Mm-hmm.
finding raw diamonds that aren't represented and all that kind of stuff. I think that there is a way to do that. I think there is a way that Reese Witherspoon's kind of found to begin with, but certainly more people could be doing that. Let's find
And
uncut gems, let's find people. Yeah.
mhm. And something that I've heard, and also I just want to shout out to everybody in the chat. We got some familiar faces. Please, guys, continue to drop any questions you have. Chris and I are going through a presentation, and we're just talking about the impact that books have. And this is something we've even talked about recently in an
Mm,
office hours, where I know a lot of screenwriters, successful ones, but ones in particular that are really trying to cultivate an audience are adapting the scripts that they wrote, feature length scripts, into books to then
yeah.
sell those to build an audience, to then have that help catapult the funding and get into development on their scripts. And for those that
Mhm.
want to be able to take that next step, I think that is a really interesting path, and people are going as far as doing graphic novel
Graphic
versions. If
novels,
you have a
correct.
really strong genre film, whether it's a horror film, whether it's sci-fi, there is such a large appetite, especially within the Gen Z demographic who love manga, graphic novels, anime, animation. That segment is so strong. And
Yeah.
we've seen that with even some of the films that these filmmakers worked on, being Into the Spider-Verse and the response of those movies. That really captures the mind of youth and only can
Mm.
translate and catapult potentially into a live action production. I think books being this metric of success that producers and studios are looking to leverage those audiences with directors who know what they're doing and building off of some celebrity like celebritism that comes with the nameplate of having Ryan Gosling on your production. I think that the
Mm.
marketing efforts of Project Hail Mary were in particular really impressive despite some of their shortcomings. And I'm, you know, there's a reason why Kubrick would always adapt based off of a source material being a book, you know?
Yeah,
I think it
correct.
gives you a foundation and a larger canvas to then boil into a movie, so I think that's very fascinating.
Even if The Shining was one of the loosest, book translations there's ever been, right? And apparently Stephen King went crazy about it in the day before it became absolute
Yeah,
massive hit.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I've got some of my taglines pulled up here if you want me to throw you a few out. So having
Yeah.
seen the movie, I'll give you, I don't know, I'll give you my top 6, okay? Maybe 7, top 7, okay? Because I had to write them in 3 different ways. This is what you usually get. You'll get fun, you'll get epicness will be another one, and then the third one will be stakes. What are the stakes? You know, give us the stakes. So, like, the world is dying, only one man can save them. That kind of thing is like a stakes one, all right? But I did this one. So one of them was the longest shot in the cosmos was one that I quite liked. Believe in a Higher Power was my other one. One Last Swing for the Stars, Project Hail Mary. Life Was Lit While It Lasted, because I thought about the sun. Right, I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of pretty cool, right? And it would be good for the Gen Zers. Hope is Light Years Away. It's Daylight Saving Time was kind of like my It's Morphin Time, I suppose Power
That's a
Rangers
really
style.
good, like, '80s tagline.
Yeah, it's daylight saving time. Mate, I imagined it being like, Sylvester Stallone sitting there with his helmet on. And then final one was his mileage claims are astronomical. That was one of my fun ones. Because you could throw that on the side of a bus or something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And this is what they wanted. One ones for buzz. They wanted ones for like specific billboards would be a really cool thing as well. So they were like, right, what would we put on this billboard that's going to be on, like you've just said, Sunset Boulevard? Right. Well, there was some billboards that were going to be in like a rush hour kind of area, right? And it was going to be lots of people were going to be stuck in traffic at this billboard. So what would it be that would help sell Project Hail Mary to people who are sitting in the cars on the way to work at 9 o'clock, stuck in LA traffic? And for that, I was trying to come up with ones that were like these, like you had different sort of directions. One was like an arrow saying 2 miles, and then it was like nearest cafe, and it was like 1 mile to work. And then the third one was 12 trillion miles to Ryland Grace or something like that. You know what I mean? So I was trying to come up with ones like that. But yeah, man, I
Yeah.
mean, it was fun. And it was a lot of fun because I was going through an awful lot of trouble back home in England. I had to go back for a family emergency. So whilst that was going on, I was able to sort of delve into this film. And I really,
Mhm.
really loved it for that reason. Anyway, you want to talk about the look now, Sweens?
Yeah,
Have a
let's
little
dive
bit of talk
into it.
about the look of it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So again, I've already said it. It's one of my favorite looking movies of all time. All right. I maybe not of all time, but certainly
Of the
that I can
sci-fi
attest to.
genre in particular, I would say, too.
I agree. I think of I mean, like when we go back, like looking at shots like this, there were moments that were breathtaking. It was in the same way. We know when you watch the spinning thing on Interstellar, when you've got the I'm trying to remember what it's called, the spinning ship, and he's coming in to try and interact with it, whilst that do 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 do
When
like
he's trying to
in
dock.
Interstellar. Absolutely, the docking scene, that's what I should have said. I don't know why I dived around I spun around the whole thing, but that for me was mesmerizing. And I told you last week, the bit when the waves are going over the mountains, those are mountains, those are waves, right? When that's coming up and above you, and you're watching that in IMAX, just a moment of absolute dread and immenseness. And yeah, this film had loads of that. Where did they film it? Let's take a look. They filmed it in the UK because the best things come from the UK. You know that, Sweeney. Even though no, I won't say that. Right? I love LA and I want everything to be made in LA. But the UK knows how to do stuff, right? And they filmed it in Shepperton Studios in the UK. We had the interior of the ship, which we're going to look at in a moment. It's a fantastic set. I love my sets. I love production design. I love production designers, and this is an awesome set. Um, they also filmed a lot of the stuff. You know, the bit when the explosion went off and the rocket blew up and everything like that. That was at this
Hmm.
area here, Sweens, and this is Mullard Radio Astronomy Observatory in Cambridge, right? Which was like a real science-based, space-looking telescope laboratory, and that was where they filmed a lot of this stuff. Some beautiful shots there as well. Any of the stuff that's shot on the ship, the aircraft carrier, is actually here at a pier in Portsmouth in the UK. So a lot of these outdoor scenes are shot on this kind of little bit of kind of flat backing on the back of the pier here, all right, which was very interesting. And
Hmm.
yeah, now we're going to get into the actual interior, the set itself. This guy, worst picture I could have found of this guy. I apologize to Chris Wood. This guy was the guy, Chris Wood. He was the guy. If you want to check him up, Sweeney, on IMDb,
Yeah.
I think he did Avengers Endgame. I think he did an absolute bunch of like superhero films. I think he might even have done the Batman, but check that one
Christian
out for me.
Wood.
Chris, I think his name's Chris Wood. Forgive me for butchering his name.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, if you get the IMDb page up for Project Hail Mary, you'll find him on there. But right behind him here, you can actually see the Hail Mary. That was the reason why I took this one from a behind the scenes explainer. But yeah, probably one of the worst pictures I could have got of him. So I apologize to him if he's watching. Not that he's watching, but if he ever does watch this, then I want him to know that I butchered his his picture with this one here. But he's responsible for this. And I have to say, like, just one of the coolest sets of all time. This is the interior of the Hail Mary. You can actually see here you've got Ryland Grace's uh, captain's chair, I think you call it here. Um, and just all these really cool light diodes. And if you see the interior, then which we're going to show you in a second, then you'll understand why all these light diodes are on there as well. It's amazing. Have you found him yet, Sweens?
I'm
Has he appeared
looking.
for you? I know worries.
Yes.
Is those interior light diodes that you can see. And what was great about this was it's on like a big wheel. You can actually see here, like there's this massive sort of wheel around it, so they could move it and all these different kinds of things, I believe, which is cool. Otherwise, they could strap a camera on here and spin it around on this rig bit here, which would be pretty cool. Yeah, tons of shots of this, which I thought I really like the interior of a ship. It's one of my favorite things to look at, whether it's Gravity, whether it's Interstellar, whether it's 2001, whether it's Solaris, whether it's the new Solaris, the Soderbergh one, Sunshine, the Danny Boyle one. I love that interior. Like we all love a good ship's interior, and this is no exception. The other thing that's really cool that Chris Wood built, and if his name's not Chris Wood, I'll be
Is
absolutely
he the
ashamed now.
production designer or is it?
Yeah, the production
Oh,
designer.
okay. Sorry, I thought you said he was part of the VFX team.
No,
Okay.
production designer. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I did see. Yeah, his name is Charles Wood.
Charles Wood. Forgive me, Charles.
Yeah,
All right. But
Charles Wood. He
yeah.
did everything from Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, Project Hail Mary, Doctor Strange, Across Time and Space. It seems like he's done a lot of like bigger Marvel productions, Wraths of the Titan, The A Team, He did Fool's Gold, which I know that you said you really like that movie, didn't
I
you?
like Fool's Gold, yeah.
Yeah.
I also like
Uh,
Gold starring Matthew
I mean, no,
McConaughey.
that's what it was. Gold.
When he does let me tell you, right? People have slagged me off for that in the past. Not on this, but in the past they've said, "Why do you like that movie? It's absolutely dog bleep." All right. But I'll tell you why, right? There is a speech in that that's called What is a Prospector? And I love that speech. It is such a great speech. It's got this beautiful bit of music behind it. It's great. In the same reason, I like Bag of Ants because there is a speech in it that's by Will Smith into Matt Damon's ear, and he's talking about finding the green and watching this thing. And you've got this beautiful music by Rachel. I think her name's no, it's not Rachel Portman, but I'll remember her name in a minute. But either way, beautiful. When you put together a great speech with a great bit of music, it works. And there's loads of that in this film as well, which brings me back to it. But yeah, Charles Wood, he designed these amazing sets. And this one in front of you is really, really cool. If you take a look down at this one, right, this is Rocky's tunnel. Okay, so the tunnel that goes from the Hail Mary, which I suppose we'll say down here, and the Rocky's ship up here. This is it. And in fact, what I love about this is it's made of this kind of translucent material so they could make light pass through certain passage parts of it when he was walking through, which is really cool. I believe, and you'll have to talk to me about this, Sweeney, but there's these things called Dino lights. These are Dino lights right here, right, Sweeney? These ones here. And
Hmm.
I think Shane told me, weren't they used on like aircrafts or not aircraft, sorry, on airports? They were like airport lights, like you've got at the end of Heat that are flashing lights all the time. You know, like when they blaze really bright lights or something. I think Shane told me that. And these are Dinos that are all the way around the outside here. And this is how he managed to do it. How he managed to get the light, and they would run them all the way along here when he moved along, and when he came back, they'd move them this way and stuff like that, so they could run them sequentially, which I
Hmm.
think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Shane utilized or the history of the light, but I know Shane uses those on a ton of productions. He even used
Yeah.
them most recently on his like the latest feature that he's getting off of. But you can tell, I mean, all of these are DMX'd. All of them are going to be individually be controlled by board op and being able to get that precise lighting that they're going for. And I really loved that sequence. And to just speak to the production design and the way that the alien craft looked and it ultimately worked from the
Mhm.
little figurines to ultimately the larger vessel that they would travel through is a really like different way at looking at extraterrestrials and maybe the ships that they had. They went a different
Mm.
direction. I don't know if that's how it's presented in the book, but I really did love the direction of the film from an art standpoint.
I did too, and there's things I've put in this presentation about Phil Lord and Chris Miller and their philosophy, which really came through from every single interview. And I watched interviews with Daniel Pemberton, who did the score, and I watched interviews with Greg Fraser, and I watched interviews with a few others, VFX supervisor, and also the puppetry people as well, who were puppeting Rocky. And one of the coolest things was they all seemed to say, "Look, we had time to be able to be creative and see if we could
Mhm.
use different things." Daniel Pemberton talks about being on this project for 2 years and taking an awful long time mixing different things. He said like it's like, mixing palettes of paint. You've got all these different things at your disposal, and you're trying to see what doesn't work, what works, and he says an awful lot doesn't work, but the things that work really work, and then you know, and he says if you've got time to experiment and play with things, then you come up with something really, really cool by the end of it. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
think that that's another problem that we have nowadays in filmmaking. Things are expected so much faster and so much quicker than, you have time to be able to allow creativity to blossom, like they did on this film. And that's one of the things that, as I said, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, it seems like they allowed their creatives under them to really kind of go off on tangents and see if they could use their creativity to develop things. And one of
You
them
know,
was this. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
well, I feel like that reminds me, and you hear these stories, especially throughout the history of film, where you
Mm,
hear the craftsmanship that went into making the movie. And in particular, we're talking about Project Hail Mary. But you know, one which was really well publicized, which goes to the point that we were even making before this like session that we're in,
yeah.
is we wish films were allowed to fully market the craftsmanship in every facet of the production because I really do feel like we're in an era where audiences want to appreciate the amount of effort went into making the Project Hail Marys or their other
Mm,
films that we love. And I feel like the one filmmaker that was really able to capture that before we lost like the traditional Blu-ray and DVD consumption was Peter Jackson with the original trilogy. Like
mm,
I don't know if you watched them as a kid, but I remember when
yeah.
you would get the DVD, you would get the like 50-day video log that he would do every single day, or maybe it was every like once a week digitally, and he would build out this whole supplementary series you could watch. And it would start from pre-production, him meeting up with the storyboard artists and the people that were designing the look of the
Mm,
hobbits and the wardrobe and giving that to the wardrobe team. And then you would see how they would develop those looks and bring in the talent. And you would hear, Elijah Wood talking about what it was like to wear the costume for the first time. And then you would go to the production design team who were getting the storyboards and seeing what they could make. And then ultimately building the first Hobbit hole and having the team seeing the town for the first time. And what was awesome is one, that was getting youth excited. That is the shit that got me to be into filmmaking was
yeah.
seeing the supplementaries of Peter Jackson. I mean, granted, I saw Fellowship of the Ring and I was like, I want to be a director. I didn't even
Yeah.
know what that meant, but I saw Peter Jackson and I'm like, I need to be a director. But then I started watching the supplementaries. And you know what was also really good about that time
Mm,
is merchandising, I feel like was at its best in the early 2000s with movies because
correct.
with the launch of the movie, you could go get like the encyclopedia, or it was like the Silmarillion, the graphical Silmarillion that broke down the
Yeah.
world in the style of Peter Jackson's movies. And I actually
Mm,
think that he would, and not just him, but Peter Jackson with that whole production and the people that worked on it took so much care to telling the stories of
mm,
J.R.R. Tolkien that it felt like it only helped the craftsmanship of the film. And like, it's great that American cinematographer is always like diligently putting out stuff like this, but that only
mm,
goes so far. And that's what we really want people to take away with this is one, it takes a lot of freaking time to make a movie and it
correct.
needs to be appreciated. And I think that because movies have become so readily available and with streaming just being inundated with new stuff, while it's
Mm.
great to have all of these options, what I feel like has been lost potentially along the way is a general appreciation for how hard it is to make a film and the fact that we have these movies coming out. So, soapbox moment, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I agree entirely. I think that that's one of the saddest things now with and there's a thing that's just popped up on the 101, like that's I'm coming into Hollywood. You'll see where I'm going with this in a second, right? That's about an AI director and somebody who basically prompts AI to create a film. And it's like that can be its own thing by all means. If you want to do that, that's your choice. But one thing, and I can't remember his name, but he's done a whole big Hollywood white letters, with his name, and it says AI director, whatever, on Fiverr, right? But I just thought to myself, that's you. It misses out so much, the collaboration, the teamwork, the everything that goes into creating the film. The fact that it goes like I was talking to somebody the other day who's from a studio, um, who engaged AI people to be able um, to help with the creatives. That's what they called it. All right. And I said, what does it mean helping the creatives? Then they said, well, Chris, do you know that there's so many directors that don't know what they want in terms of a storyboard? So this will help them. AI will help them. And I said, then they shouldn't be directors, okay? Because the point is, you take the script and then you, as a director, visualize what you want with that script. The movements of the camera, the shots that you can see, the way that you're going to present that character, the nuance. You need to sit down and think about that script. Read it like Shane's whole thing 9 times if you have to read it 9 times. If you have to go through it 100 times. It doesn't matter. Go through that script and find a way that you can unlock it and you can communicate that to millions of viewers out there around the world of all different languages, of all different countries, of all different cultures, of all different things like that. That is your job as a director. That's why you become a director, to tell a story that can go as far and as wide as possible. That's what Homer was doing back in the day with the ancient epics. That's what we're doing today with Project Hail Mary and things like that. That is your first port of call. You are the director. That's what you're meant to do. Then if you have a storyboard artist, if you can't draw, I can't draw, right? I can't draw very well anyway, right? I try to draw. If you go to a storyboard artist, you're then explaining to that storyboard artist what you see up here from reading that script. And hopefully they'll have read the script too. They'll know exactly where you're going and they'll be able to draw exactly what you see. So you have passed on that information from text into mind into the person drawing it. And then that goes down the line. Then you get somebody else involved, let's say a composer, and you're explaining to them how you see the character of Ryland Grace, how you see the character of Rocky. And then somebody with the genius of Daniel Pemberton can then go, right, I know how I can communicate the innocence of Rocky through music to people around the world of all different cultures, of all different creeds, of all different everything like that, right? This is what we do when we create a film together. We pass on every single one of us brings something to the table for how we can communicate, whether it's costume design, production design, whether it's composers, whether it's cinematographers, whatever it is. We all come together to show this story as best as we can and to communicate. Even the costume design in this, right? When you look at it and he's wearing a cardigan that's got a fucking fox on it. Sorry, he's wearing. It's got a fox on it down in the bottom corner like this, right? It shows that he's clever, he's cunning, he's wily, he's a clever person, like all of this stuff, and he likes being cozy as well whilst he's on board the spaceship that's trillions of miles from home. It's Everything is helping to communicate that. And again, it's teamwork. And it's the thing that we will lose if somebody just sits there with AI and does it. That's a very solitary task. That's a very lonely task. That's fine. That's your job. You want to be Ryland Grace out in space. That's fine. But if there's something this movie tells us, and I don't just mean in terms of the story, it's also in terms of the telling of the story, it is that teamwork works. And teamwork
Hmm.
brings optimism, and teamwork makes really, really, really good stories that are worth telling. And that's what I think that I've seen from watching this film and also from covering it and learned about it, is that when you get two good directors like this and you get a studio like MGM who were willing to invest in them, or is it Sony, whoever, right? Who are willing to invest in them.
Amazon.
Amazon, so it is MGM, right? Who are willing to invest in them and willing to go along with it. They can make a $190 million movie and it's already crossed 300 million this weekend and it will go further. You know what I mean? That's a brilliant, brilliant thing. And I really hope that more people take note because
Hmm.
that's you like you said, it's brilliant. The thing I'm loving about the Odyssey right now is learning the camera that they shot it on, the Keithley, right? The IMAX Keithley. Everything about that, the history of that camera, the way that that was created, the reason it was created, the fact that it's got this bubble on the outside so that they can shoot dialogue with an IMAX camera. Wow, I'm in. Show me the thing. You know what I mean? I'm excited about absolutely every element of that. And this is what we should be doing. I mean, like, if I go back to the presentation again, because I know I'm going on one here, Sweeney, so feel free to jump in at any point.
Well, I would love to say something that I feel like piggybacks just off of that, being the
Yeah.
Nolan types or even the David Finchers. And this is almost, and this might be a stupid position to take, but it's never technology over the long, like lasting history of film that has made films better. Think
Hmm.
about how rudimentary filmmaking was and it was still good, to how advanced filmmaking has become. And
Yeah.
sure, technology has enabled certain aspects of filmmaking to be possible, or certain
Yeah.
techniques to be viable, or certain things to ultimately be sustainable in traditional production. But it is still the people and the minds that collectively come together to utilize that technology that the film industry is still ultimately beholden to. It is not the tech. And sure,
Mm,
AI is going to help specific things, but
mm.
there is no capacity in which AI is going to be the thing driving filmmaking, because we still need brilliant minds in whatever capacity AI ultimately gets placed into to drive the technology. And I do think that is an underlining part of filmmaking.
Mm,
Sure, Nolan is utilizing some of the best cinematography tools that any filmmaker could use today, but
mm,
those tools would not be brilliant without the mind of someone like Nolan putting them to work. Sure, on an innovative level, they're brilliant pieces of machinery, but it still takes a craftsman to utilize them with precision, due diligence, understanding, and most importantly, curiosity to try to push that tool ultimately to its limits. And yeah, I think that right now with AI, there's such a hot topic around this, but still, it takes craftsmanship. Everything is a tool and a resource, and it takes minds that are going to find the best places to utilize. And I think that's something that will not yeah, Chuck even said it will never lead. I agree. Tools
mm.
are for an assistance purpose, and I think we continue need to craft the concept of people need to be really strong craftsmen in any capacity of being an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyways,
No, great points well made as well. I mean, and it feeds into this as well. Like we're talking about, utilizing tools. This guy, we've already given him some lip service, so we don't need to give him too much more. But Greg Fraser, right here, looking really cool with his sort of, I don't even know, like an LED sort of on the mat box here, something like that. Pictured in Rocky's tunnel, Greg Fraser himself. So there he is, and he shot this absolute masterful shot. And we've talked about AI, we've talked about like high level sort of like cinema, computer generated things and all that kind of stuff. But really, what's cool about this, and yeah, there is obviously some CGI in there and stuff, but they shot it this through this thing, which is pretty unbelievable. Um, do you know about this one, Sweeney?
no, talk to me about this.
This is absolutely nuts. Okay, so he wanted to have this is when he's harvesting the astrophage. Okay. And what Greg Fraser said he wanted to do was he wanted to He wanted this astrophage, which is like this algae that has been sort of eating suns of different planets. He wanted Ryland Grace, when they went outside the ship to harvest this astrophage, he wanted it to fly past him. He wanted it to look all really cool. And it was this kind of like, the whole movie's about this astrophage, this algae that we can't see in real light. So it's something that is, beyond our eyes, like IR is. I wrote a really cool article, by the way, in the past that was called IR cinematography. It'll definitely be on FA's thing, so read it. It's
I'll try to
brilliant.
look it up.
I think there's even a video that we did of it as well, which Ross voiced, which was about introduction to IR cinematography, I think it was called. And if we don't have it, Sweeney, I think it was because we had to pull it down because we used somebody's example.
An introductory to infrared cinematography.
There it is. And we tagged this guy in it. We wrote his name on it. We were trying to celebrate this guy's work, but he got very annoyed and said that we hadn't asked his permission, which was fair. All right. But yeah, we talked about shooting IR, and this is exactly what he's done here. And by the way, Greg Fraser's got history in this. He took the IR filter out of the camera and shot IR infrared in Dune 2 in the Harkonnen arena scene, which was cool as hell. But with this one, yeah, he had his lighting team go out and buy a whole bucket of single infrared LEDs. So almost like Christmas lights. And you can see them all around here. They're all kind of like around this thing. And this is like chicken wire. And they put chicken wire all around Ryland Grace, who's in the center here, Ryan Gosling. All right. And they put all of these kind of LED infrared lights all around him. Okay. And then what they did was they sequenced them all. So they put them into a DMX and they had them all sequenced so that they would go up and down, almost, running kind of thing. And would provide these light chases and everything like that. And then to add a more organic effect, what they then did was they put an attachment in front of the lens, which was two, I think they were called Lexan. Lexan's ringing a bell now. Whatever it is, two plastic panes. If I've said the word wrong, Lexan, but I thought it was Lexan. I could have sworn. I read about this anyway in the American cinematography. They put these two plastic panes positioned right in front of the lens, and then there was a narrow gap between them, and the first AC was pouring water through a funnel and a tube through these two panes of plastic, I suppose you call them. And as that water slowly dripped through the tube, it would dribble down between the panes and form this moving sort of filter of water in front of the lens that would refract all of this IR light in a real shimmering way. And those infrared highlights would look like this, which is absolutely mesmerizing. You got this kind of real kind of gooiness to it, I suppose, as well as these beautiful running, chasing lights. So that shot through the chicken wire with all these IR, and they've taken the IR filter out of the lens, out of the
I'm
camera.
assuming those close-up shots, that's actually what that right there is probably
Yeah.
what they shot in camera. And of course, that's probably a shot there with Ryan Gosling. And then they built upon that through CGI and computer technology to build out some of these wide establishing shots. But that's what I would guess is some of those more medium close-up shots is
I'd
probably
agree with you
what
on
they
that.
built out this whole look from.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, just purely because of where we are in this bit as well, as you can see. But a very cool, gnarly looking thing, and also old school. You know what I mean? Like, as I said, I remember days when I was working for Shane, and he was asking me to get this light thing that was called the Medusa that he'd built using a couple of random heads and different things like this,
The
and a couple
dip
of random
bulbs with the
bulbs.
Roscoe paint.
And it was just crazy stuff. And it was like, that's one of the things I love about cinematographers when they go off and they go, I've made this thing in my shed with like a screw gun and a bunch of metal, and this is what it looks like, and it's going to give us one of the coolest shots of probably the year. And
And what
I say
Chuck
that
was
really
saying
carefully. Yeah, go on.
in the chat here was Lexon is the GE name for polycarbonate. So what they used is polycarbonate, but that's probably like the manufacturer name or something along those lines.
Chuck is definitely the GOAT right
Chuck's
now.
in the chat
of,
right
of
now
our
helping us out.
comments. He's the guy. Honestly, we've had a few good ones. Ranger 7, by the way, can I just say, has given me one on another
I
chat.
love Ranger 7. Ranger 7, I hope to see you at NAB like I do every year. So let's have a great conversation. He's been a long time F8 member, so it's always great to be able to see people come together to talk cinema. Chris, I know you're about to say something.
You guys can hang out at the Black Magic booth and go and talk over the Black Magic Cursor Immersive and stuff, you know?
Oh yeah, 100%.
But yeah, he said Tested has a few great videos on the set construction. So yeah, if you guys have enjoyed what I was saying about what was it, production design and the stuff that was already created, these really cool sort of looking things, then go and take a look on that Tested, I think it is. So if you want to drop us the link on there, Ranger, then that'd be amazing.
And Chris, I know that Greg did a lot of IR technology innovation for that production, like we were talking about, I think even earlier in this call, or maybe it was before the podcast, on
Might have been,
Zero
yeah.
Dark 30 is when he was testing shooting that final sequence with the Navy SEAL raid. That's all shot with IR. I want to even say they went as far as using a FLIR camera system for that sequence, which at the time I think Roger Deakins used the FLIR for what was that border film that he did with Denis? Uh
Oh,
Sicario.
yeah,
Sicario
Sicario.
used
Oh,
like FLIR technology as well, and I want to say I don't know what they ultimately used to be able to get those images that we were just looking at, but I know that Greg spent a lot of time building that look for Zero Dark 30, which at the time was really impressive. I mean, that movie came out in 2012, you
that's
know.
really, really cool. Yeah, that's really, really cool. He's he's a fascinating guy, as I said, and one of the things I'll show quickly. Let me find the thing. Yeah, it's from this article. So if anybody wants to just, I feel like I should shout out American cinematography because I don't want to just just take all of their interview and just basically break it down and tell everybody what was said in it. But yeah, it's a brilliant, brilliant interview. It's got some great stuff about Unreal Engine being used here. So you and I have just been talking about II and stuff, but there's some great stuff in here about how they used
Mm.
Unreal Engine, how they did a previs. I was just talking to a director this week about how they're using previs in a really big budget movie, and they were talking about how they were using previs and how they were gonna, like they're basically seeing the shot before the shot, right? I'd never really experienced what previs was before now, but
Oh
this is what they
yeah,
do. They
through
get
tools
Unreal
like
Engine.
mhm.
Yeah, go on, tell me.
No, through tools like Cinema 4D or
Yeah,
Unreal Engine, which has become pretty ubiquitous, like in the film industry itself, especially with how the video game industry and the traditional film live action industry have been merging.
yeah,
Unreal Engine has become really easy for a lot of people to use to build rudimentary sets. But even David Fincher was utilizing this long ago. I don't know what programs he did. Was putting to work or software, but even
yeah,
for Panic Room, he shot the whole movie in previs before they even stepped like on set and rolled a single foot, an inch of film. And at the time, the cinematographer jumped from the production. I can't remember if it was Darius Kanji or someone else, but he
yeah,
was like, I don't want to be a part of a film where there's no curiosity left for set. There's nothing
yeah,
left for us to discover. And he talked about that being one of his worst films to shoot because the previs almost created like a jail for him creatively to operate within. And if you haven't watched Panic Room, it's a very precise movie. Like
Cra-
some of the
from that
precision
opening
filmmaking,
shot that goes through the floor, right?
dude. Yeah, or the one that goes through like the coffee mug handle. There's like a bunch of crazy CGI set pieces in there, but I haven't used Unreal Engine, but I know filmmakers, even like FA mentor filmmakers, Justin Jones, he
Yeah,
previses a lot of his music videos and narrative work. I think within Cinema 4D.
hmm,
I could be wrong on what software, but it's very popular by people that are really good and quick with it. Again, if there is a big learning curve, and a lot of directors are using Blender, as Ranger 7 said. That's 100% spot on. I think that
yeah,
technology, or even like Shot Designer, if you haven't seen that, that's a far more rudimentary top down for lighting and blocking, but like I use that. Not
yeah.
everything is developing out in a 3D model, but mhm.
And is that better than using like drawing out your own storyboards? I suppose is that allowing you to sort of walk around in the world and stuff?
I think for a movie that has this much level, like this level of one lighting,
Yeah,
production, art design, there's a lot of like collaboration that has to go on between all of those departments, especially
yeah,
think about for building a ship. It's a lot of integrated lighting, right? So to
yeah,
be able to build out the set where is the light coming from? Because if there's not a sun, the light has to come from the interiors typically. And what does that cabin look like? What is the art direction? So I think for movies like this in particular, sci-fi films where, or even like Alien Romulus, I think is another great example because that gaffer
Yeah,
specifically talked about most of the lighting came from set integration. And I think that's pretty true for most space films.
yeah,
So I think this allows for the conversation in pre-production to not overspend on things that are not correct. And I know something that Shane does in previs is utilizing Insta360, and we actually have a really awesome course at Filmmakers Academy that is free and it is on
right.
YouTube. But Shane essentially utilizes the Insta360 to build out a dollhouse. He scans the interior of whatever the location is,
Yeah.
then brings that into the app to be able to build a 3D model that allows all departments to be able to communicate. This is where the lighting will be. This is where the painting is. Blocking is going to happen relatively here. That's a
Mm,
far more rudimentary version to than what this production probably utilized to be able to previs. But
yeah.
I think it can save money and potential like disconnect between the departments that would be a major money spend and resource dump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, I remember, I think I was the one who introduced the Insta360 to Shane as a potential
Oh,
location
really?
scouting tool. Yeah, I remember that. It was at Cinegear several years ago. I think 2019 or something, a very long time ago,
Yeah.
2018 even. But yeah. Um
You know what's
this is
fascinating,
Go on, yeah.
Chris? Sorry, before you jump into this, with the technology that is coming out, and I know that prep is one of the places that we're continuing to kind of like shrink in the production process. It has been
Mhm.
cool where the innovation there in particular, I do think is of benefit to filmmakers. Like even Ranger Seven's talking about using Light 3D and Shot Designer for his top downs. I think it's
Yeah.
unlocking a level of prep that people were not able to have prior. That's all I wanted to add.
No, that's a great point as well. I mean, like, as I said, seeing Shane's thing when he used to do the dollhouse, it really does allow you to sort of share that immediately. I mean, one of the coolest things,
Mhm.
Shane does it. I remember talking to Adam Newport-Berra, who was the guy who shot the studio, and he's done a bunch of stuff with Olivia Wilde, and he's going to be a really big cinematographer in the future. If he's not already a big one now, I mean, he is. He's winning awards left, right, and center, but we're going to see him in the film, and feature in the future, definitely. Um, and he creates a Bible like Shane does, a cinematography Bible that he can then share with his whole team and share with further teams. And it's really cool that to get everybody on the same page as to what you're thinking. So you're right, doing these top downs and doing 3D walkthroughs and stuff like that really does allow people to all, as you said, get in the right headspace and get in the same headspace as each other, you know? Um, and again, it goes back to just timing, how much time do you have to be able to create these things? You know, I'm gonna dive into this bit right now. That's for you remember the I can't remember what the room was called. It was like a don't go crazy room, this
Yeah.
one, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a room that he could go to as an astronaut, I suppose, who was missing Earth, and he could just go and sort of sit and experience, like I think he sits on the beach and stuff like that, doesn't he? He goes and sits and sort of puts his feet in the
Mhm.
in the LED wall and stuff. Well, obviously, it would be really easy to shoot that in a volume. All right, we've got volume technology. It's been around now for years. Every single studio seems to have one. If they don't have one, they're getting multiple in the near future because they are being used on everything. I just watched the new Moana trailer, and that's definitely in front of a big volume wall, isn't it? Right, you can tell. Right, they haven't shot that on a beach in Hawaii, right? And it's right. Not that I'm slagging it off, by the way. It might be a great film. Um, I've seen the source material, right, twice. Um, but like, yeah, this one they could have shot it on a volume, but Greg Fraser wanted something different. He wanted it to look like it was this faux reality. He didn't want it to look fake. Sorry, he didn't want it to
Mhm.
look too realistic like the volume can do. You can go in the volume. Like I was on the volume when we were doing this Star Wars thing, and you get sickness. There's like a uh, parallaxis effect or whatever you want to call it. I can't remember the name of that movie, but it's like when the camera moves, the whole world moves, and you get really kind of like you have to take your Zycam or whatever it's called, the stuff that stops you being sick, motion sickness,
Yeah.
you right? But yeah, I mean, like, so he was looking for ways that he could do this, and the way that he shot this, so it looked more like a fake LED wall than it looked like a real LED wall was, he had one of these, I think probably this one, and all around this bit, that was high quality LED wall, that had like lots of little LEDs in it, so you couldn't even see the distance between them. You couldn't see any sort of
Yeah,
space in
like the
there. It was all
pixel
like one
pitch.
perfect. Yeah, that's what it's called, the pixel pitch. So these ones around the outside were all like very realistic, and you couldn't really see the image. And then the ones lower down and stuff, you can actually see the big black lines in between them and stuff like this. They were sort of a much lower quality, almost like the sphere. How that one's got massive spaces in
Mhm.
between it and stuff like that, so that we could see that it wasn't real to him. And I thought that was a really cool way of just shooting something to show, that it's real. You know what I mean? And show that it's kind of not the reality that Ryland Grace really wants to be in. And I thought that was a really cool way of shooting that one too. Um, this is how he flew around the ship, which is cool. There's a great video about this, which has got the guy from Mythbusters in it, showing how he flew around the ship. They actually, and I think that this is what Ranger 7 was actually alluding to as well. They actually were able to turn the Hail Mary ship on its side, so that at some points because they were shooting obviously in different gravities and different ways. They were shooting horizontal sometimes, so it was like a big long train car, and Greg Fraser was shooting all the way along this train car. And then there was other times where they turned the whole set vertical, so you're shooting it like a lighthouse and you're going up and down it that way. So this was what was really cool on this one, and that's actually shown. Yeah, I've put a link to it. I don't want to click on it because I don't want to cause this great stream to go downhill. But but yeah, this guy here starts flying around the ship and just showing how it was done in the studios and stuff, which I think is really cool. And it's the guy from
Is
Mythbusters.
this a new technology that they've been utilizing for, like, anti-gravity sequences? Do you
I
know
don't,
any of
I
the
don't.
history behind this?
No, I don't. And this is the saddest thing because I would love to know the history behind this. So if anybody knows anything about it, please tell me. But I thought that this was used on things like Superman, the what's his name? James Gunn one. I thought this
Yeah.
was used on that. I thought I saw it being used on things like that. And it is this thing of they had, I mean, like I was reading about this actually. Oh, here it is. The shot of him, when the Hail Mary spin and everything like that, and him going on the outside of it, right? They said that they were doing wire work with 3 people pulling on these wires to keep him in the air,
Mhm.
right? So this
Oh,
was
wow.
proper sort of, manual work really. It's not like
Like,
this is
pulley
hanging on.
system.
Yeah, pulley system stuff. So they're holding on to these things to keep him in this sort of like halo rig, I suppose we'd call it, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, really cool things. As I said, there's videos on this. The other thing,
Chris,
which yeah, go on.
could we go back to the one of that, like, the one right before this? You know what this reminds me of? Is
Tell
in
me when to
Ad
stop.
Astra. Sorry, the one with, where he goes to, like, not freak out, or where the fireworks are.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The
You mean this sort of room, this
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of is, I'm gonna pull this up. I'm gonna share my screen here when I
Do it. Yeah, kick me off.
it reminds me of another recent sci-fi film, one that I know I really love is, let's see, window. Here we go. Can you see this? This is
Oh
from
yeah.
Ad Astra 2019. I honestly haven't seen too many sci-fi films kind of tackle this space that has these walls with some type of projection. Of course, this is
Mm,
not on a spaceship, but this is what they did in that movie. And not that I think that one's stealing from the other, but I really did love that concept and what they built into that, because that is likely what we would need as humans to be able to find some semblance of our, like, like the world that we left being Earth, to move to these more desolate. In this case, I think he's on
mm.
Mars in this point of the film, or he's on the moon, where he needs to utilize this, where there is no plants, where there is no exterior places for you to be able to get sun. um but I just wanted to share that because it really, like, reminded me of this.
I love this movie. I love Dead Astra, and it made me think about like before we go into any more. I loved. I think the best space films. Uh, the space films that I love. I mean, all space films really since way back when. Um, they don't really explore space. They're sort of using space to explore us as human
Hmm.
beings. you know what I mean, and our
Hmm.
place in the universe. And that's what I love most about these. I mean, obviously, like you have things like Interstellar that are about fatherhood and time spent with your kids and all that kind of stuff, which is brilliant. You know, like what a great thing to explore by doing space. And the same way,
Hmm.
Moon. Have you ever seen Moon with Sam Rockwell? Which
I
I
love
love that
Moon.
movie. Right?
Duncan Jones. It's like, where is that guy?
I know. He just disappeared after that movie, right? I
He
believe.
did a couple of things, but some of his bigger movies, he was part of the early Netflix regime, and he did
Mm,
some film that might have put him in movie jail. I think it absolutely like tanked, but he needs
that's
to
a
come
shame.
back. I actually was looking
Yeah.
at him the other day, and I feel like he does have a new movie right around the corner, actually.
Moon was so good. It was all about loss of identity, wasn't it? You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
like how even identity itself became unstable, right? That was what I like most about it. Even like even when he's up in space, the most unstable thing is himself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I really like that about it. Solaris, what's that? Memory, I suppose.
I love
The
Solaris.
Tarkovsky Solaris. Yeah, it's mostly about
Yeah.
memory, right? And confronting
I
your
even
past.
love the Steven Soderbergh, yeah, and the loss of his like partner and stuff. You
Mm,
know what's great about Moon, which is honestly a really good companion piece to Project Hail
it is.
Mary,
I agree.
because on one hand, Moon has a lot more like dread in it. It's a film that is a bit more uncomfortable, but it deals with isolation and the same kind of complex between Sam Rockwell's character on screen by himself with this robot or
Mm.
whatever they want to call it in that film is kind of his companion or ultimately maybe something beyond that. And then we have Ryan Gosling with Rocky. And I feel like those films kind of work in a really
They do.
weird companion double feature type. If you haven't seen it, 2008's
Watch
Moon,
Moon,
it is
guys.
really good.
It's
Really good.
brilliant. It is brilliant. Yeah, definitely. And I'd say, like you've just brought it out, Ad Astra. It's so good. If people and it didn't get the audience I felt it deserved.
Hmm.
Who was the cinematographer in Ad Astra? Because that was
That
phenomenal.
was
Was it Hoyt?
Hoyto. Yeah.
Amazing. That
Which
shot
it's.
when he's going down
Hmm.
the ladder and it comes above him and you just see everything below him is just mesmer. You know when he falls off whatever it is, it's not space station, is it? Whatever he's climbing down that ladder to, and you're like, oh
Oh,
my
it's like
god,
the telecommunication network or
such a
something. Some like
brilliant
array.
moment.
Another
Oh,
great movie that should be a companion piece to Interstellar because it deals with the psychological trauma that's left behind from fathers that go to essentially like go to the ends of earth to chase after their dream.
mm,
Different core like, you know, different kind of core motivating factors between Matthew McConaughey's character and ultimately Tommy Lee Jones' character, but really
mm,
great companion piece. And obviously, the cinematographer shot both. And despite them being in space, they have their very different flavor of like how they showcase space. Interstellar is this spectacle in the same way that Project Hail Mary is, but the lens of Ad Astra, what I love so much about that film is
mhm,
it's more from the lens of like capitalism and how space progresses through the vessel of capitalism and going to the moon and building these commerce areas and the
yeah,
concept of people fighting over land again on the moon, and there's these territories that are don't have like that are not governed by like the traditional way that we have earth set up. And I just thought that that was a really unique way of looking at what space travel will ultimately become, which is a
mm,
commercial industry. And you see that from him going from earth to the moon, what it costs to be able to get a blanket, just the general economy that's built into this world. And you see that with how the moon is not this place that is, so science forward. It literally has like a Dunkin' Donuts or like a
yeah,
Subway and like things that are like inherently commercial. It's a very interesting world that I personally really loved. I can understand why people didn't like Ad Astra, and
mm,
is really why Project Hail Mary has so much success because there is very much this like Nietzschean nihilistic kind of perspective that is interwoven into Ad Astra. But if you really love philosophy and these characters that are dissecting the tilled earth that was left behind by their parental figures, I do think it has a lot to say. The third act, I'll also say for Ad Astra, while it is great in the final moments, I do think it potentially falls short,
mm.
which is
I'd go with that.
unfortunately, I think, where James Gray always messes up as a filmmaker is his third act. So like Ad Astra, in my opinion, is like a 10 out of 10 film. But
Mhm.
I will admit on a script writing level, there are some flaws. The Lost City of Z, another amazing film, which is a companion piece to Ad Astra. Again, third act. It's like
Yeah.
James Gray, every single movie he's ever done, they're awesome until they're not. And I just don't
Yeah.
understand. He needs to get like another writer. The Immigrant does the same thing.
Yeah, it does.
Awesome movie. The third act. It's like he never it's like he loves the movie to maybe kind of dissolve out a little bit, which is ultimately fine. And I think you see that with other filmmakers like Derek Sion France. And they're
Mhm.
really like, I love James Gray. I see everything he does in theaters. But yeah, not to get on like on a tangent. It's just, I love Ad Astra. That's all.
It is. It's mate, it's one of the best I genuinely love that film. I love the father and son dynamic in there. I love that space.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say this about every movie, so let me not just make it about Ad Astra, but with space movies, one of the things that I love the most is that the space is what strips away absolutely
Mm,
all the other guff, and you are left with what is basically human consciousness under pressure. You are left with this kind of like, this is how you deal with things now without anything else. You know what I mean? Like if you were in the normal world with all these other people and everything like this, there's so many variables. Once you're that one man up in space on his own, it becomes very, very simple. You know what I mean? It becomes very, very
yeah.
kind of like, this is you under pressure. And that's what I love the most about these space movies, because that's
Hmm.
why we go and watch them. You know what I mean? That's why I
Yeah.
watched 2001 Space Odyssey when I was like 12. You know what I mean? And that's why I started watching all these movies all the way through. You know what I mean? It's really quite nice when they become this person on their own dealing with the biggest
That's a
problems
great
that they
way to
could
put
deal with.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a streamlined narrative. It's the
Mhm.
traditional stuff that would be the hurdles for these characters on Earth is not there, but the pressure that's put on these characters through the decisions that they have to make, even though it's far more of a streamlined like vessel, they could die at any moment from a wrong move, which is really cool. And I do appreciate what you said there about like sci-fi, especially in this film and the best ones, where they use it as kind of the vessel, but it's not completely the story. And I think
Yeah.
Project Hail Mary does that very well.
Yeah. I'll go into another thing there as well I love, because since we're on it, let me dive into this. Let me bring this bit up as well. 'Cause I put this in kind of some of the things I was saying. The story that we have here parallels these astronaut tales that we've all seen before. He's not doing anything different by having a one solo man having to go off into space and stuff. And we are presented with the fact that the two people he was meant to be on this mission with died. You know what I mean? Right early on, uh, in the like, the very beginning of the film almost, when he's sort of, like, taking that woman's vodka and stuff. It's dealt with in a very kinda light-hearted way, given the fact that we're literally seeing the fact that this is what you're gonna be, mate, you know what I mean? You're gonna die just like these 2 have. You know, that's you've been the lucky one so far kinda thing. But yeah, this story parallels these astronaut tales. Have you ever seen Icaria XB1?
I've never even heard of it. I'm looking it
Give
up
it a
right now.
type in, because I think it might be up your I think this might be something that I can now add to your list, and I only saw this when I was researching this, right? Because I was like, "Right, I know Solaris, I know Space Odyssey. Is there anything that I'm missing? Is there another one that I'm
Is it
missing? If anybody out
known
there
as
has seen this."
is it known as Voyage to the End of the Universe?
Might be. It's
Original
by this
title. Is it Polish?
it's Polish, that's why I was naming it, yeah. Ikari XB1, I've got it up in here, and I'm trying to figure out who it was that directed it. Oh, yeah,
Is
Indrik Polak,
yeah. The
if that's the
American
way you
title is
pronounce it.
Voyage to the End of the Universe. Yeah.
Hey, Polish. I know that you like your Polish cinema. I know you're a big
Dude,
Kieslowski guy. So I'm like, right, get on
the
it, Swoons.
best.
It's very,
I'm
very
on it.
cool. And as I said, it was something that I came across. Another one that's out there that you can give it a watch to. And what was great was Phil Lord, Chris Miller. While we're looking at these ones, these other space ideas, and we're like, right, what could be the different things that could create this identity of space? Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the 2 directors of Project Hail Mary, they were looking at Sneakers, Robert Redford. They were looking at Ghostbusters. They were looking at Ocean's 11, Midnight Run, Spotlight. They were looking at these films for, like, a kind of texture of what they
Spotlight.
wanted to do. Stories where you're watching these smart people, like Ocean's 11, great example, Soderbergh, right? But watching these smart people doing something clever together, and I like that. We've got this sort of rock that we don't even know what it's saying all the way through this movie, but it's making whale noises for goodness sake. You know what I mean? But we know that it's a clever engineer on its planet. He, whatever you want to call it, right? He's a clever engineer on its planet, and it's working with this person who's, let's be honest, school teacher saves the universe is quite a I mean, I bought into it straight away. This school teacher, the everyman, right? The instantly relatable guy, and that's what I think that they're trying to do here. The instant relatable people who are in Ghostbusters, you know what I mean? Save the universe from Zod or whatever
Mhm.
his name was, Zool, right? And I really like that idea. So that was one of the things. The other thing that Greg Fraser said was they looked at Alien for the visual patina. They looked at like, these shots. In fact, I might even have it on here. Let me check. Yeah, they looked at Alien for this visual patina. And in fact, you can actually see it when they're shooting it on board the Hail Mary. You know what I mean? You've got this kind of similar sort of look about it. These lights and diodes and everything
Especially in
around.
the, like, cockpit where he was driving the ship, very much like that, just switches and a lot of texture, things that feel tactile.
Yeah. Well, and as well, shooting him from a distance like this and having it
Mhm.
showing an awful lot of space in the frame, so you've just got him there, so it shows his isolation and, that's kinda
Yeah.
what's cool about once he moves in with or once Rocky moves in, it's all fluid movement and lots of kinda, like, close-ups and mid shots and everything like this, rather than these longs that we've had prior to this. You know what I mean? I actually really like that about it.
You know what's interesting, Chris, about this film that just dawned on me? The
Hit me.
perspective of this film is never from, like, the populace being the people. Do you think that people on Earth, do you even think they knew about this whole, like, Project Hail Mary? You know how, like, in Interstellar, you kind of no one really knows that this is happening? Everything's kind of from the perspective of this, like, crew that's coming together to be able to put this on, or the government,
Mhm.
I should say.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that they didn't know anything about this. I think this was a super secret thing. They didn't want there to be
Yeah,
this kind of shock on Earth. It wasn't like in the what was it? Don't Look Up. You know what I mean? They were trying to keep it all under wraps and everything like that. And
yeah.
yeah, I think that because we don't get anything, we don't get any like messages sent to him, sort of like all
Mhm.
supporting him. The only time that we get the sense that the whole of humanity is behind him is through the soundtrack. And I'm going to get into soundtrack in a minute, but that was something that Daniel Pemberton talks about, and he was saying that like all these sort of choral tunes and everything is like humanity's sort of cheering grace on, but we don't actually get that in any way, shape, or form. In fact, when he sends stuff back to Sandra Huller when she's on the ship, it's kind of like a very subdued moment, isn't it? Given the fact that this guy has just saved the universe, he's just saved mankind from literally 3 billion people dying. They'll never even know his name. I actually quite like the humbleness of it all in the end, you know? And it's very difficult to write like that, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, it's very difficult to write like that. It's very difficult to edit something where you're showing somebody who's been traveling for decades, and that's why we have these fast cuts just to show time passing so fast. Him growing this massive long beard, him shaving the massive long beard, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's very difficult to cover that, as well as covering two completely different timelines, and flashbacks and stuff like that. Writing it is not easy to write non-linear. Not easy at all. And, I feel like Nolan makes it look easy, right? But it's not easy to write nonlinear and keeping the two stories intertwined, like we do in Interstellar, I suppose. But like disclosing information slowly so that it keeps making an impact. Every time we have every time we disclose the information or we have a flashback, it reveals something about why he's on this mission and what's the point of his mission and why he is so important and why it's become him, this school teacher, why he is the important part of it. I really feel like the writing in this and the way that it cuts back and forth is exceptionally well done. The flashbacks answer not just how he got here, but why he's the only one to do it. I think I've already said that, but that's what's cool. And yeah, I love that most about this film, to be honest. The way that
Mhm.
we were able to jump back and forth, and in the end, we find out, of course, that he's been forced on this mission. That he was only brought here because he was drugged and actually didn't want to do this mission. And we kind of sense that early on, but the fact that we then learn, okay, she betrayed him, Sandra Huller, and we still don't hate her for it. We understand why she had to do what she did. I think is exceptionally. Ikari XB1 is actually a Czech film. They said correct. Okay, well done. I apologize. Um,
That was me, I said Polish.
oh, was it you? I think
Chris,
I
something.
agreed with you though, Sweens. I agreed with you. Sorry,
Yeah,
go on.
yeah, you're going down with me. I want to speak before you go into this next part because
Yeah,
you
go for
talked
it.
about the two astronauts that were on the mission that
Mm,
ultimately succumb and passed in the film. And you know, if there was something in particular I did not like about this movie, and it kind of bugs me when I see other like cultures represented in film. This is not even meant to be like a woke stance. I just did not believe that that guy was Chinese and that she was Russian on screen. I do not know why that, especially the Russian kind of like archetype sometimes does not work for me in movies when like their main attributes are they drink vodka and they have like quippy banter. And I don't
yeah.
know if that should, that doesn't mean that a Russian person can't be that way, but it just feels very like easy. And I felt like those two characters who could have maybe potentially been more developed and had impact, because I do think that one sequence in particular early on in the film where he slowly kind of pulls all of the pieces together of who these people might be and then
Mm,
ultimately shoots them out was a really poignant and awesome part of the movie. But the characters that we ultimately got to know, I feel like did not have the depth that I would have liked to have known them as an audience member, even though his character might not have. I just felt like they were kind of basic and generic. That was one of the parts in the movie I did not like.
that makes sense. That makes total sense. And in fact, we don't get to know much about any of them really. I think that that's one of the
Yeah.
things. I think that was a choice. They didn't want us to get to know. Like we only learn what
Yeah.
Ryland Grace learns about them, right? That's
Yeah.
one of the cool things about the story, I suppose. Is that we only learn through him looking at their pictures and saying, "You seem like a nice guy. I owe you 3 things of vodka," or whatever it was, like those things. Yeah, you're right. The vodka, stealing it from the Russian woman. The total total stereotype just thrown out there.
Very
Yeah, I'm with you
stereo.
on that.
I mean, both of them felt very stereotyped, and that's not to be
Mm,
like, oh, like make a big deal out of it. It's just sometimes I would love a little more depth to people like that. Or not that Ken Leung isn't Chinese. I think he can actually speak fluent Chinese, and he's a
mm,
great actor. And I'll admit, partially because he's in industry, I see him from that lens of
I
that
get that.
show that's currently on HBO. So I just have a level of separation where I just don't find it believable considering his character. And I know that he was in like Rush Hour 2 and a lot of other movies. And here's
Mm,
another question
go for it.
thematically, because all of these like flashbacks within the movie, do
Mm,
you think that's Ryan Gosling's character, Ryland Grace, remembering that? Or that's context for us as an audience to look at, and his character never ultimately really knows who they are? Like, do you think those are memories that are surfacing? Because part of me, as I watched the movie, it's
mm.
never like he actually knew those things. It seemed like, hey, here's a like parallel storyline from the past so you can better understand who this character is. Or do you think it's actually him remembering? I'm curious
That's a
what the
really
chat
good
thinks as
question. I
well.
I assumed it as him remembering. However, he isn't. It isn't shot POV. Strange Days like for you. Um, I thought I'd throw
Yeah.
Strange Days out again since they've been refining that film. But yeah, it's not exactly shot POV, so it's not like it's his memories. It's not like we're watching in Inception when we're seeing the kids through the eyes of Cobb or anything like that, which is strange. Yeah, we are seeing it almost third person like. I know that one thing to say about that, by the way, is Greg Davis talked about how I think he called it the Scooby Doo shot. Um, Let me remember. Yeah, he called it the Scooby Doo shot, and it was basically the idea was it was this. Uh, Let me tell you how he shot it before I answer your question. They wanted it to be like 1980s TV cartoon style Scooby Doo flashback. That's why they called it the Scooby Doo shot, with like a wiggle to transition the image and make it look like that. And the way that they shot that, because it looks a little off, and it does when goes into these flashbacks. He used a technique that was used by Janusz Kaminski in Saving Private Ryan when he had flashbacks. And he says that basically it was a film camera with a mistimed shutter, and it would lead to this kind of streaking of the image. And he basically, in order to achieve that, he took an RE435 and shot uh, off a 4K high quality monitor, but it had a mistimed shutter so that it would give these streaks and everything like that. So therefore, what we have IMAX for the reality, and then this sort of 239-to-1 memory kind of thing that's got these sort of weird bits in it. Does that make sense, Brendan?
Mhm. Yeah.
And he wanted it to feel different in that respect. So that was one of the cool things that I read on that. However, like for me, I think that's him remembering it because what I find oddly romantic that I really like about this film is it's not like a Spiel. We were talking about Spielberg before. I don't know if we were doing it on this podcast or beforehand. Brendan and I end up having long conversations before we've even started these conversations, guys. So I don't even remember what we talk about. But it's not like a Spielberg where it's like in Jurassic Park, you have almost like an expert who is sort of taking us round, and this person knows they're an expert and everything like that. In this, we actually have Ryland Grace finding Ryan Gosling's character finding out. He's like, oh wait, hang on a minute, I'm smart. I can actually do all these sums. I can actually do all this stuff. Like he's remembering it. And that's how, by the time we get to the point where they're harvesting astrophage and they're doing all this, he's remembered that actually he is this genius who did all this stuff on astrophage. It's like it's all coming back to him. And sadly,
Mm.
what comes along with all that stuff that he remembers about uh, being a genius or being this great microbiologist or whatever it is, space biologist, I don't know what you call it, right? What he remembers in the midst of all that is how he was like duped by this woman that he actually I don't know if there was feelings. There was a hint there, wasn't there, I suppose. I mean, we never find out that he's got a girlfriend or anything, but there was a
What
hint
you
that there was
talked
definitely
about,
something
like
between them.
being with someone,
Yeah.
or he spoke to, and I didn't know if that was Sandra Hewlett's character. We don't even know if that's how we say her last name, so respect
She
there.
was
But
she was brilliant, by
yeah,
the way. But I'll get
yeah,
back
no,
into
she
her
did
in
a
a minute.
great job.
Yeah.
No,
I
but yeah,
mean,
we don't know if ultimately he remembered or not. Yeah, I mean, that was a little confusing for me. Not that it really had
mm,
impact on the story overall, but I was curious to
that makes
what
sense.
level he was remembering to what we saw within the film, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, I think that it glosses over that in the same way it glosses over the science. It's not like a Nolan film where we dive into the science and it's like it's a feeling, but we're gonna hit you with the greatest science of all time here, like in terms of, deep space, which is, pretty much what we were getting from Interstellar. And I came out of Interstellar feeling like, oh my God, I feel like I've just had an amazing science lesson that's taught me everything that I need to know about science and about the world and about the deep space and the universe and everything like that. This kind of glossed over that in the same way it glossed over that idea of right, it's a feeling. You know what I mean? We're kind of experiencing the world or the world as we know it through Ryland Grace's eyes. Very James Cameron, I suppose, in terms of structure and in terms of the way it is. A bit Abyss. I felt when I was watching it, very Abyss like. Suppose you'd
Yeah.
say. You know what I mean? And Rocky as well. I mean, the beauty of it is that's talking about communication and how we can work with things that are completely different to us. As we said, how the hell did I end up crying over a rock? You know, um,
You know
there's
what's
been
funny, Chris, is
yeah,
we were
yeah, go
even
on,
talking about Spielberg. I feel like this movie, and this is probably going to like maybe ruffle some feathers. I think
do it,
this movie
ruffle,
does better than what Spielberg has been trying to do for literally the last 15 years with the BFG and some of these other movies. Like
yeah.
this movie is more Spielbergian than Spielberg is in 2026.
I'd agree with you. I would. I felt when I watched it like I was watching a Spielberg movie. I really did. I felt like I was watching something that made me like E.T. made me feel things for extraterrestrial alien that I've never felt before, and I felt the same thing for an extraterrestrial alien in this. Try saying that one. Um, it felt very much like a Spielberg movie of the past. And then since I don't know, since he did The Terminal, since he did other things like that, he's become very sort of. I mean, Disclosure Day isn't going to be. We talked about this. Disclosure Day ain't going to be in space. It's going to be on Earth. It's going to be about Earth's response to finding out aliens are real. It's not going to be going out there. It's not going to be doing any of that. It's going to be very kind of home based. And like as much as I like the Fablemans, as much as I've liked stuff that Spielberg's made in the last 10 years, it ain't a patch on what Spielberg was doing prior to it. You know what I mean? Like I feel Munich was his last great, great, great film. I absolutely adored Munich. You know what I mean? But I mean, it
Yeah.
had a very
And that's
James
not
Gray
to
ending.
say,
That very James Gray ending. That one as well, by the way. It just kind of
yeah.
fizzled out with him standing on the pier.
Yeah, and that's not to say like every movie needs to be Spielbergian, kind of like his Jurassic Park, his E.T., that like or Jaws era filmmaking. I actually
Mm,
love that he's tried to step into a multitude of places with his storytelling,
mm,
like I actually do commend this evolution of filmmaking Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
I will agree with Ranger 7. West Side Story was awesome. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, top
yeah.
notch.
I
Like
actually have
that
not
was that
seen
was
West Side
fire.
Story. I have not seen it. I did hear it was really good. I did
Oh,
hear it was
mate,
really good.
it's a return to form. Yeah, I forgot about that, to be honest. It wasn't that it was forgettable, it was just me forgetting. It was the squidgy bit of matter behind the thing. Just to finish off on this thing, really then, one thing that was really cool to me that stood out was this idea of we had 2 different so when we were doing these 2 realities, we had life on the Hail Mary being this harsh, gritty thing that we've got right here, and then we've got the memories that he's got that are all smooth and clean and look very dreamlike and stuff like that. I thought that was really quite cool. Oh yeah, I put up there for what the footage was shot on 5203, 50 ISO camera stock. One of the cool things that was talked about actually, and I don't know whether it was Greg Fraser said this in that interview and stuff, but they fired up to get starlight. They fired up in a dark room up to hang on, let me get this right. I think it was
What?
260,000 ISO, 256,000 ISO.
So I think they printed the 5207 like camera stock,
Correct.
right?
Sorry, did I
Yeah, they
say that
shot it
wrongly?
digitally. I think it
Shot
might be
digitally, then
just what you
printed to
had.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I,
yeah, I mean, like, there's a thing where they crank the ISO up to 256,000 ISO in order to get the stars because, obviously, otherwise you won't. It'd be very dim, which I thought was really cool. I thought that was a cool thing that I read. I'd have to like learn more about that and stuff. But yeah, if anybody wants to see it, I'll put these links into our chat at the end of this. But there's some great stuff out there on YouTube that are just Greg Fraser being interviewed and talking about Project Hail Mary. You can actually see in the background there the volume thing that they were working on, from a distance. So there it is. And they would obviously surround him with these. They'd push these in on wheels and sort of surround Ryland Grace in this room. One thing that I have to talk about, Sweeney, and it's something that I'm desperate to one day do a whole thing on, is soundtracks. Soundtracks we love, soundtracks that we think are the best soundtracks of all time, soundtracks that are subdued but obviously really, really good. You know, it is vital. And this guy, the guy that that did this soundtrack, Daniel Pemberton, is fast becoming one of my favorite composers of all time. Like fast, move over Bach, right? Move over Beethoven, right? No, but with John Williams reaching his final soundtrack this year with Disclosure Day, um, I think he said it's
it's
his
gonna
final
be his
soundtrack. I'm not.
final.
I think he
Yeah,
said it's his final. I mean, come on, Dad. Come on, man. He's 97. You know what I mean? He's
that's crazy.
he's uh he's the daddy, but he's ain't he's reached he's reached a very old age right now. He's a ripe old age. Zimmer's not getting any younger either. I don't know how old Zimmer is, but Zimmer's done quite a few things. You've got I'm trying to remember what's the name of the guy who's doing Dune right now, who's amazing. What's his name? He did
I
Sinners.
Oh, you're talking
Oh,
about Ludwig?
Ludwig Göransson. Wow, that guy.
I didn't know he was doing Dune.
I
I
believe he
thought
is.
Hans Zimmer is doing Dune,
Check it out. See if he is.
the
I
new
mean,
one.
is Ludwig doing? Oh, I've got it wrong. Ludwig's doing Odyssey, isn't he?
Yeah, he's doing Odyssey. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say
Ludwig
I feel like
Göransson's
Hans Zimmer's still on
phenomenal.
lock. Yeah,
He's
Hans Zimmer's
still on
still
Dune.
doing Dune 3. I didn't know that this guy, Daniel Pemberton, I don't think I've ever actually looked into his work. He was the composer on Steve Jobs, which that
Yeah,
movie is one of honestly my favorite Danny Boyles, and the score in that in particular is so
best
good.
soundtrack. Yeah, it's epic.
Um, Slow Horses is also great, just from like a show on Apple TV. I really love that
And he
show.
did the
I
soundtrack to that.
Yeah, he did the music in that. He was on Michael Mann's Ferrari, which I know was a stinker. I never saw it, but that's pretty cool. I mean, his body of work's pretty extensive. A lot of television. He did Spideyverse, which is super popular, where that's probably where they probably started their relationship.
Mm.
He did Ridley Scott's All the Money in the World. I didn't know about that one.
With
He actually did the
Christopher
music
Plummer.
for Gold.
That's why I like him. You listen to that bit when he does. That's a prospector, and what's his name? Matthew McConaughey. His acting performance in that flawless. Honestly, top, top, top. You might not like the film, that's fine, but watch for that one scene. It's brilliant. Gold, the prospector speech. But dude, this guy. If anybody wants it, I'm gonna put this link into the conversation as well. Dolby did it, or Dolby, however you Americans say it. Dolby, I like saying. They did a creator talk with him. It's an hour long, and you will be blown away. This is one of the coolest talks I've heard about cinematic scoring in my life. I absolutely love this video. I will happily put this link into the chat, and guys, put it on when you're on your way to work. If you've got LA traffic on your way to work tomorrow, then this is the one to listen to. It is brilliant. He is amazing. Uh, this is one of his quotes, which I absolutely adore. Developing all your own sounds, I call it mixing your own paints. You've basically spent a long time mixing paint colors rather than buying it off the shelf. And that's how you get stuff that feels very original like this. And I've got millions of these, and most of them don't work. You spend ages when you experiment, and when you have time to fail, you have time to create. He's basically talking about different soundscapes that he's created. He goes around with a recording device and he will record things like, for this soundtrack alone, he recorded a squeak that was from a tap in his friend's house when he was staying over. When you turn the tap on and it squeaks, and he used that squeak all the way through this soundtrack. That was to show this sort of thing of, organic sounds that he was creating, metallic mixed with water, mixed with all this kind of stuff. And he was using these different sounds. And as I said, this thing that he talks about in this interview, it just blew me away. Like, the stuff that he talked about was just mesmerizing. Um, what was I gonna show? Oh, yeah, this. So, the first thing that he did was he was playing a wood block because he wanted that to be almost the sound of Rocky, this thing of a wood block, and this is a wood block right here. It's basically just a piece of wood that's been hollowed out in the middle, and when you hit it with one of these beaters here, it makes like a dull sort of like a that kind of noise. All right. Wow. Look at me. I'm doing mouth makes, right? But he was making these noises and he was playing with them. And then basically he wanted to include that. He wanted that to be the beginning of the I'll keep wanting to say renaissance of the creative part of the film, of doing all this kind of stuff. So if you notice there's certain parts of this film that have these amazing, really kind of Interstellar style scoring bits. There's one when they're fishing for astrophage, when they're going through this planet, and Ryland Grace is holding on to the chain and he's like dangling in midair, and it starts off with this kind of like tapping. And then I don't know if that's going to blast people's ears off, but yeah, starts off with tapping and then it just explodes into this amazing thing. You've got human beings. They went to Wells Chapel School, right, and got the school pupils to do body drumming, body percussion. So they were drumming on their chest, they were drumming on their knees. There's a bit when they've got bowls of water and he's splashing the balls of water and he's pitching those up and down and he's recording them because he wanted everything. And that's why I put this here. He wanted everything to be about communication. And in fact, if you rewatch, when you go back and when it, when you go and see this again in cinemas, because all of you are going to go out and watch this like 10 times, all right? When you go back and see this in cinemas, you will see that the the whole scene when they're in that tunnel, the majority of it is either Ryan Gosling talking or it's soundtrack. And the soundtrack tells us about the progression in their communication and how they're able to communicate with each other. Again, I put organic in there. Every sound he wanted to be organic. Metals at one point, wood at another point, you know, um, water at another point. Everything, he was trying to do these things. He did something really cool, which was he got this thing, which is called a crystal bache, and he actually went to France to record somebody playing this. And in fact, if I click this, I won't put any sound on. I hope not. But look at this, Sweeney. The computer's working. Its processing speed's fine. This is somebody playing this almost like a piano, and they're just running their fingers, their wet fingers, over crystal, and it's making these really cool sort of like organic glass style noises. All right. And it's a very, very cool thing. You can actually see this. He did something with a glass harmonica, which is another thing. Like, look at the state of it. It looks like some kind of space age shit now. You know what I mean? But this is what he was recording the soundtrack on. He went out and he collected all these different things, and then he was putting them together and seeing how they worked amongst each other. I told you, he used the squeaking tap. People say, you used everything but the kitchen sink. He literally used the kitchen sink in this. You know what I mean? Like, he used a tap. You know what I mean? And I really think it's a masterpiece for this. You know what I mean? The way in which he does this kind of stuff, he uses every single musical idea on the planet. He does this call and response thing that's between Grace and Rocky that moves all the way through. Um, and it's this beautiful, as I said, he finds like this sonic language that really works. I really think that the soundtrack for me is the crowning glory of this film. It's great. It's been well directed. The cinematography is mesmerizing. Everything is so well done. Ryan Gosling deserves to get nominated for whatever he gets nominated for. I'm not really about nominations. I don't care, but it's really good. But the soundtrack itself is absolutely brilliant, and it blows me away. As I say, like when I watch this, and the bit that hits me the hardest, and as I said, when I'm on my soapbox, this is the bit that hits me hardest. There's a bit when Ryan Gosling and, Rocky separate, and they go their separate ways, and Ryan Gosling is meant to be going back home to Earth, right? And, Rocky's gonna be going back to where like, Eritrea or something, I can't remember what the name of the planet is that he's from, but that's going that way, he's going this way, and they separate, and what he does is he chooses this Hawaiian, or is it a Maori? I think it might be a Maori, forgive me, New Zealand Maori tune called Song of Farewell, Po Ataru, right? Which is beautiful for them separating. And it just blows me away. It's like this gorgeous sort of like tribal song. I don't know if you can hear it, it doesn't matter. But this gorgeous tribal song that's used when they separate. And it's this very kind of subdued moment that I think is just so well done. And yeah, personally, I think that was my crowning glory for this whole thing. I thought that everything was so well done, but Daniel Pemberton doing this soundtrack was definitely a highlight for me. I loved it, and yeah, there we go. That was
Do you know if they carried over any of the elements from the score, like those wooden blocks, into the sound design specifically to try to have them kind of work together? Do you happen to know?
yeah. So I believe that the idea was that the wood block was going to be almost like Rocky's theme. And that was so when we're listening to the woodlot being used, in fact, have I got it in my notes here? Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can close this. Um, I think I made notes on one of these pages that allowed me to sort of talk about that. No, I haven't got them up. I'm working off no notes right now just to try and uh, do it properly. But yeah, I mean, like, I believe that the woodblock was meant to be sort of this sort of rocky sort of theme, I suppose you'd call
Mhm.
it. And originally, Chris Miller was like, "Let's just use woodblock for the whole thing," and Daniel Pemberton was like, "No, we're not doing that. We're gonna do this, like, I want to bring all this stuff together." We've got this choir singing and this choral moment that comes really, really powerful, and I don't even know if there's words to these soundtracks, they're just there, but yeah, he definitely used that. He brought the water in there as well, which was cool. As I said, drumming on water. There was points where apparently he was just sitting on the floor of different recording studios, just running his hand up and down the wood and banging on it and seeing if he could get these different sort of sound effects. And he wanted to just marry them all together so that it's all, again, it's this idea of communication, this idea of coming together and playing together. And apparently, what he wanted to do was he didn't want everything to be instantly recognizable. So he'd have a girl singing. There was a female singer that's amazing all the way through it, singing almost like a kind of Lord of the Ringsy sort of like solo singer bit. And as she's singing it, he doubles it with like a crystal bache, which is this thing that we were showing you before. This thing. Hang on. Uh, yeah, with this crystal
Crazy
bache.
instrument.
Oh yeah, this sort of instrument here, and he doubled it with that so that when you're listening to it, you can't tell exactly what it is. It has this kind of ethereal quality. So even people that are used to picking out things like that's an orchestra, that's that, they're not able to do that because there's certain elements that you're like, oh wait, could it be that? Could it be that? It's sort of different. Everything's changed.
Mhm.
And it goes with this kind of theme of the whole film, which is left is right, right is left, up is down, down is up, all that kind of stuff. And again, it's Daniel Pemberton taking all of these different paint colors and mixing them and seeing what works. And he's been given, like I said, he worked on this for 2 years. So that for me always adds to this idea of, he's had time to sort of pick out and find what exactly works. And I think it's brilliant. I think it genuinely is an absolute masterpiece. And he's going to be there or thereabouts. I mean, as I said, we don't really talk about awards. We don't really care about awards. It doesn't really satisfy us to talk about awards enough. But I think that it's going to be a very fast, very interesting best soundtrack, best uh, musical score next year to find out what wins it because
Mhm.
it'll be this, there'll be the Odyssey up there definitely, you know what I mean? And definitely a few more, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
super excited to see. It's definitely gonna be hard because going up against Nolan, Ludwig coming off of what I think was his third Academy win,
Mhm,
and being able to have something like The Odyssey to go against, and just considering how prestigious Nolan has become as a director, it's going to
mm.
be really hard for him probably to get the recognition he deserves. But hopefully, I'm wrong. And Project Hail Mary, like you said, it a focal point will be the impressive craftsmanship that came from all departments, but in particular the score. I think that that's definitely worth like a larger consideration for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting as well, mate. I think that the other thing we've got to remember is, that this is coming out March of this year, like the same month that there's been the Oscars, like right after the
Hmm.
Oscars. And although it's not in the same league, Rocket Man came out that time and Taron Egerton was being given the nod for an Oscar, and he just disappeared amongst the noise because there was so much that came out between then and the next year. The
Yeah.
only movie that I can say that has truly beaten that sort of algorithm is Sinners, which came out, what was
Yeah.
it, like last March, last
May,
April,
I think.
May, and it
Yeah.
was, I mean, like, still being talked about with fervor and excitement when we got into the new year. And that was when I started to think, "Oh, this might do really well in the Oscars." Whereas, usually movies that come out around about this time, they just get forgotten about, sadly. I hope
Yeah.
not. I hope that this one doesn't, because it's been such a great, and learning about it as well, sitting and talking, like, I could tell you another thing, and this was one thing I totally forgot about. Um, the puppetry, just blew me away in this movie. So the way that they controlled Rocky, let me go back and then I can show it. Yeah, there's a great video here. I'm going to share this one too, right? But the puppetry in this movie, okay, was based around a 17th century puppeting uh, thing called banraku. Okay, um, 17th century Japanese method that had multiple puppeteers operating different things. Now, this is the main guy. The main guy was this guy. Let me find him. Him. All right. He's the guy who was the voice of Rocky. That's why he's got this thing on so he can speak as Rocky. But when they were running him around the ship and everything in this sort of glass housing or whatever we would call it, uh, that was this banraku, this sort of Japanese puppetry where multiple people were operating it all at once. And again, it's this thing of it could easily have been done as a piece of, VFX heavy CGI, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like that. They decided to use CGI to enhance what it was, which I think is, it was so well done and really, really well done. And this guy, if you remember him, he was there at the beginning in the news broadcast,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
on the thing, right? Well, I think they got him like a little cameo as himself in there. So there you go. That's pretty cool. One of the things I'll say as well, Sweeney, just to finish that off, by the way, um, I loved about this movie was it became a commentary upon itself in terms of film. It talked about different films. Like, he's called Rocky because he's been shown the Rocky film, and he's talking
And
about
then
Adrian the
Adrian.
Planet. I
Mhm.
love that. Meryl Streep, there's a reference to what can't she do, which was really, really cool. And then there was another thing, and I wrote it down. Let me find it on here because I definitely wrote this down because I was fascinated by it. Um, oh yeah, right. So there's a reference to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's a bit where Ryland Grace is sitting and he starts humming the theme tune, do 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 do, and I was like, oh, beautiful. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
there's lots of, it sort of becomes a criticism in itself of
And it
film.
doesn't overstay itself with that either. I was kind of concerned with the commentary and the
Mm,
quippiness of this movie because I did see some people, not a lot, say that it was too comedic at every point,
mhm,
which that concerns me sometimes with a movie like this. You're being too self-aware, which
yeah,
I don't think is necessarily like a bad thing in a film, but I actually do feel like this movie was balanced, with the comedic, with the heartfelt, with the quippiness. It never like went too far in any of those directions. Maybe people might disagree, and this is coming from someone who hates the Marvel kind of at every moment there's a joke or there's a quippy like phrase or whatever. I don't feel
mm,
like this film in particular fell victim to that in any capacity.
yeah. Why do you think people have connected it with the way they have? Because we've just said, it's reached, I think it's at like 302 million. After today, it's going to be probably 340, something crazy. But It's wonderful for cinema, I'll say that. The fact that it's getting people I mean, Ryan Gosling was at a thing in, Burbank. He turned up at a showing in Burbank on, like, the first day out or second day out or something like that, and he said, "It's not up to you guys to save cinema." Did you hear this talk? He
I
said, "It's not
did.
up to you
Yeah.
guys to save cinema, it's up to us to make the movies that will make you come and watch things in the cinema." You know what I mean? And I thought, what a great comment to make. Everybody in LA has been saying, "Oh, we need to save cinema. We need people to go out to the cinema." It's like, yeah, but it's up to the studios to make things that people will go out and see. Thankfully, we're gonna
Innovate.
s yeah.
Yeah.
Create something fresh, and that's what's beautiful about this story. We know that Michael, wonderful, right? Well done, all right? They're gonna get $1 billion, right? Because it's Michael Jackson, right? And it's already got a built-in audience and all that kind of stuff. But this was a piece of original cinema that could have died a death, right? I mean, The Martian wasn't exactly breaking box office figures, was it? It wasn't exactly winning thingies galore, and that had a built-in audience. So what's quite nice is that this is a fresh movie that has got people's bums in the seats in the cinema and got people talking about it. The reason I mean, when
Mhm.
we put it out, it was one of our best sort of responded to posts. You know what I mean? The fact that people were interested in this movie. Lots of people have seen it. You talk to people about it. They're all talking about it. It's all over my feed. People are tweeting that they've been and seen it and telling their friends to go and see it. So that can only be a really good thing for cinema. And
Mhm.
as I said, like the fact that a studio like MGM took this chance and went for this and really plowed what 190 million into it. It's small compared to what we're seeing right now, you know? But yeah, it's great. And the fact that it's made a big budget, made a big return, hopefully tells us, that they'll invest in more like this, more like Sinners, more like, you know, I don't know what else there is.
Yeah.
Backrooms looks like it's gonna get quite a few people in to watch it as well, right? When that comes out. That young
And
director.
yeah, I feel like one, it really hits a just a larger audience due to the nature of the movie. I think it's something that is smart enough for adults, but approachable enough for kids or younger audiences that want a sci-fi film that a community can come around at a time where the world is particularly tough considering what's in the headlines. I think that this level of escapism, something that sees a strong protagonist with a strong storyline, and
Mm,
is one a sci-fi film which is not typically as produced anymore. I think naturally audiences are really interested in these type of films being made. And you know what's interesting about Michael, and you said that it's going to make $1 billion. I hope it does. I want movies like that to be the case. But at the same time, I think that segment of cinema is a lot harder to make their money back than something like this, which is a fresh story in a genre that is known to be loved. And
yeah,
it's not that I don't want Michael to be successful, but it is a biopic with a very preconceived concept of what this movie could potentially be, which
agreed.
I think will create more friction for audience members than them wanting to just show up to the box office to learn about Michael. I don't think that any of the biopics in particular have been that meteoric of success, and
No,
I know that, yeah.
no, I'm with you. I'm trying to think about which music biopic, has really been something where you can say, "Holy moly, that was, like, mesmerizing." Like, people were talking about Mangold's Complete Unknown in a real way, but I think that was mainly down to
You know
Chalamet.
what's my biggest issue with
Yeah,
biopics is in that movie is like I hate these what's it, cradle to crypt biopics is what they
yeah,
call them,
Cradle to Grave,
from
whatever you
like,
call 'em, yeah.
yeah, cradle to grave. When we were even talking about this earlier, I think films like Steve Jobs, the Danny
Mm.
Boyle version, is a better dissection of a character like Steve Jobs than showing his whole life, which has
Oh,
so
I get
many
you.
twists and turns.
Mhm,
We're focusing on a segment of a character to be able to be the story, which the like structure of Steve Jobs is great. It's three different product launches where we get to see this character in three different pivotal moments in his life, which
mm,
then speaks to the interpersonal, the collaborative, like the interpersonal relationships between his like ex-wife and his daughter, then the collaboration between his teams, then the position of what it's like for him to be operating in those markets. It's what we
mm,
need to know about Steve Jobs, not every single aspect. And I think biopics sometimes try to break off such a large story that it
Mm,
never works for a film, in my opinion. I think Mr. Turner in particular is another great example of a
mm.
biopic done by Mike Leigh, which is really strong, which does not try to cover his whole life. And not to go down the rabbit hole on biopics, I don't want that to be the case for Michael, but we know that it is. It's going to be another, here's the formula, let's show him as a kid. And then when he wants to go on to his own, and then here's the things that start to spiral in his life and become very sensationalized. It's like, listen, we've already kind of know that. You
Yeah.
know, like you can't just replicate his timeline into a movie. That's audiences want more than that. At least I do as an audience member. So I
I
don't know.
think that's the thing though. There's different audiences now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's the Minecraft audience that want to go to see what people do about a game that they play on a daily basis. And that's why Minecraft got such a crazy audience, even if the film itself wasn't particularly amazing. You know what I mean? They got the
It's meme
zeitgeist of
worthy.
yeah, and I think that's exactly what certain movies are going for now. And I would
Oh
say
yeah.
Michael in the same way as that. I mean, don't get me wrong, hell of a cinematographer in Dion Beebe, and it's gonna look amazing. I can tell you that now, right? Um, a good director in Antoine Fuqua, but at the same time, you're right. There is something formulaic about biopics, and it's like one of those where you've said we kind of know what's gonna happen, before we go in. So therefore, we're going into it as it being a concert
Half the
movie,
yeah.
a
Half the
movie that's gonna
time
just be for the music and nothing else, and primarily the story is kind of weak sauce in comparison to the music, which is strong as hell because it's Michael Jackson music, you know what I mean? I mean, that's where we're up to right now, and that's the sad thing for me is that I'm a bit like you. I love The Aviator because it doesn't show the entire of Howard Hughes' life. We don't see him die. We don't see any of that kind of stuff. We see him trying to build this spruce goose. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I loved about John Logan's script of The Aviator was how he managed to segment everything down into, look, this is this guy's life. You can tell everything you need to about his OCD, about everything like this from this segment when he is building this massive plane. You know what I mean? And that's what I loved about that as a biopic. And
yeah.
you're right, I don't think that enough people do that nowadays. Like Steve
Well,
Jobs
if
did it.
half of them, oh yeah, half of them just feel like whether it's Bohemian Rhapsody or a lot of this, it's just they pulled the wiki page and said, let's have this be the basis of what the
Mm,
script is going to be without actually getting into something that's maybe not public knowledge or well known or that dissected, you know? Like
mm,
even The Social Network, which is not really a biopic, but as biographical components to it with
mm,
Mark Zuckerberg and those characters, it's still using a courtroom like discussion about what ultimately happened. And I don't know if you ever read that book, which is really good. It's all that The Social Network's all written from court transcripts. Like
mm,
most of that script is. So I just feel like there's a multitude of ways to be able to talk about someone like Michael Jackson without it needing to hit all of the beats of what's in his Wikipedia page. Ooh, he released this song. You know, there's so much. You could focus about the making of Thriller and what it was like to be able to bring something like that and spend more time on really what ultimately culminated to being such a major turning point for Michael Jackson. I don't know.
yeah,
Anyways,
yeah. No, that's a really good point. I mean, look at Oppenheimer. Have you ever read the script of Oppenheimer?
no, I never read it.
Dude, all first person, the entire lot of it, and it's brilliant. It's like I reach out, I shake Teller's hand, Kitty does this. It's very, very it's exceptionally well written and totally
Mhm.
different to anything I've ever read before in my life, you know? Oh, by the way, while we're on space films, gotta keep saying it, First Man, Damien Chazelle, masterpiece.
I need
Utter
to
masterpiece.
revisit that. I
Not
just got it
sci-fi
on.
because it's real. It's based on Neil Armstrong, unless people don't think that we landed on the moon, in which case it's sci-fi as hell, right? But like, but yeah, like masterpiece. It really is. It's
Yeah,
such a brilliant, brilliant thing. And there's a bit at the end that's got them between this glass partition, him and Claire Foy, and it's so good. I'm like, oh, what a bit. I think it's
I need to
Linus Sandgren
revisit
as
that.
well.
Oh
It
yeah, dude,
is.
Linus, which I'm super excited to see Linus. He's doing Dune Part 3, I want to say. Now that Greg's not on there, which if anything, I think Linus is probably my favorite cinematographer working today. Just
Yeah.
his ability to mix formats, in particular in First Man, between 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter, and 35. He does such a great utilization of those formats within celluloid to be able to speak to specific components of that movie.
Hmm.
And even for what the movie was worth with Wuthering Heights, I mean, that movie looked beautiful, particularly, or even the film before that being, what was the film that they did together before
Oh,
that?
Saltburn.
Yeah, Saltburn. What
It was
a
nicely
awesome,
shot. That, yeah.
awesome movie. So I'm really excited to see what he does, considering that this is the first production in which that I believe Denis shooting on 65 millimeter. I don't think he's ever shot on 65 before on any film. The
Wow.
other Dune films were all shot digitally. So this one, I believe, has a mixture of both digital and film, which will be really interesting. I want to say they even used the new 265 system on this production. So I think it will be cool. And, they're obviously going to live within the same world of Dune that's been
Mm.
established, but it will be cool to see what liberties Linus takes to be able to build upon what Greg ultimately did. And, it's interesting because I think Greg Fraser is working on the Sam Mendes production, right? The Beatles.
The four
I think
Beatles
that,
films.
I think that's what took him away from, actually, now that I say it, that's probably what likely took him away from shooting Dune 3. Let me confirm that.
I mean, that looks wild, and the concept of that is wild, isn't it? While you're finding that, that is four Beatles films. Each of them probably going to be about 2 hours, 2.5 hours long each, right? They're going to release all four next year in April on the same day. So you can go to the cinema and watch John, Paul, George, and Ringo in any order you want, and they'll all nicely fit together and give you a really good wholeness of the Beatles as individuals and as a band. But like, that is a startling concept and very interesting to see how that comes together as a four biopics or a biopic of the Beatles, which is going to be, as I said, roundabout round about 12 hours long. You're going to spend half your day in the cinema, which I can't think of anything better than that. But it's definitely going to be an interesting one. I mean, see where we go
Yeah, it is
from
Greg
that.
Fraser.
Is it?
Yeah, so it's not listed on IMDb, funny enough, but through some research, it has been confirmed that he is going on to be. I wonder if he's shooting the next Batman movie too. I would assume he
Yeah,
would be shooting that.
Batman 2.
Yeah. Dude, talk
Yeah,
about it. You know what's awesome is Dave Cole, who is our
yeah.
lead colorist. He is the
Up for
mentor at
Filmmakers
Filmmakers
Academy, right?
Academy.
Yeah.
Greg and him are both collaborators. He worked on Project Hail Mary. We actually want to do some live conversation with hopefully both of them, but we can for sure get Dave Cole to be able to talk about his process on this movie.
That's cool because I was reading a lot of stuff, but I didn't want to go into it too much because, well, that and also I thought if I say this and say it wrong, I'm going to look like a right idiot because I don't understand coloring as well as I should, as well as I'd like to. Um, and Dave Cole, as I said, from watching stuff on FA, he's a genius. He does one that he talks about Dune and the coloring of Dune, doesn't he? There's definitely a
Oh
series that
yeah.
he does on there. Yeah. Yeah, Dave
Yeah.
Cole, very, very interesting. To be honest, that's one of the things I'd really like us to do on these podcasts, to start thinking about who we can bring on. Like maybe you guys can tell us in the chat. Let's not say Roger Deakins. I mean, we'd love to have Roger Deakins on, but like people are clearly going to go, Roger, Roger, Roger. And it's like, yep, okay. Why don't you get on Steven Spielberg? Yeah, but like logistically, like who we could actually get on and we could actually just talk to about their films because we're
Yeah.
fascinated. Um, yeah, Eric Messerschmidt, somebody said he's shooting Batman 2. Awesome, because he's a great, great DP. He did The Killer. He's done
Oh,
a bunch of
Eric
stuff
is,
with
yeah. I was
with
gonna say, how
Fincher.
would he be able to do that and the Beatles? I was like, between four films that
Yeah.
he's probably shooting all at once, I could be wrong, to then doing Batman 2. That's cool that Eric Messerschmidt's doing that. He seems like he would actually fit really well into that world.
Mate, Messerschmidt is like he is somebody who's got an amazing catalog of work like under him. Like when I'm watching stuff, and he did one called Devotion, that's like a World War II flight planes, like plane dogfighting sort of in the air film with Glenn Powell before Glenn Powell became like Mr. Running Man and Anyone But You and all those movies. Glenn Powell did this one that was Devotion with Jonathan Majors before Jonathan Majors got all of his all the issues that were surrounding Jonathan Majors when he was
Hmm.
doing Quantumania and stuff like that. I won't go into any more than that. I don't think I need to. Um, but yeah, they were on this movie called Devotion, which is great. And Eric Messerschmidt shot that. VFX was by a guy called Jeff Anderson. He had some fascinating stories that I talked to him about. Yeah, that's a great, great movie. And I'm really glad that Eric Messerschmidt's doing Batman 2 because that's gonna be cool. I mean, mate, we are very fortunate. We have got some great, great cinematographers out there right now who are lensing some amazing movies. You know what I mean? Like I
Oh
was talking
yeah.
about, Dion Beebe just did Michael. Apparently he's doing Heat 2. That's gonna be really cool with Michael Mann. You know what I mean? So like we've got a real cool bunch of films going out. And who shot Disclosure Day? Who was the DP on that?
I think it's got to be Janusz Kaminski.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it
Just
will be.
because he shoots everything, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm excited for, Chris, and honestly, what would be fun to talk about for an upcoming film is I was
Bring it.
just looking at the calendar. Dude, the drama comes out this Friday.
It does. And do you know what? We should talk about it because apparently there is a startling twist in that TMZ decided to let
I'm
out to
literally
all of
gonna
their viewers.
wait, they broke what it is or no?
TMZ decided to do some kind of like conversation piece that was, how do you feel about this being the twist in this movie? And it's like, why would you report that before the
But
movie
they didn't
comes out?
say it. They didn't say what the
They've
twist
kind of
is.
made it quite well,
I'm not
no,
gonna look at
they
that.
have said, "Whatever you do, anybody who wants to watch this anybody who wants to do like I do and go and watch the movie first and then read everything about it afterwards, then, uh, don't go on TMZ. Never go on TMZ. It's not a great source for any information." Uh, but yeah, they definitely put a thing out killing the drama for a lot of people. So yeah,
What the hell?
go and watch it. Pattinson, Zendaya, 2 phenomenal actors.
I'm
Yeah,
literally booking my tickets right now on AMC. If I can watch it this Friday, maybe that's the next film hang. We're
that
trying to
should be
have these sessions be topical, but we're also still going to do some of our old faves because we got to sprinkle in some of the old movies, you know.
it
But
gives us chance as well, Sweeney, to sort of look at like so this one, we've talked about Project Hail Mary, but it's also allowed us to dive into like going, "Oh, we love Interstellar." I mean, I know how much you love Interstellar. You had it when you walked down the aisle, didn't you? At your
oh,
wedding?
dude, I saw that movie
Interstellar theme.
7 times in theaters. That's
Oh.
the film I've seen the most in theaters out of any other film.
Yeah, precisely that. All right. And it's like we've been able to do that. We've been able to talk about Ad Astra, which I know is one of your favorites.
I love
And
Ad Astra,
yeah, it's allowed me to introduce you to Icaria XB1 and find
which
out
is a
that it's a
Czech
Czech
film.
film. Yeah.
What we learned, dude.
So yeah, I mean, like it's allowed us to do that. So maybe when we do the drama, we can talk about romance. We can talk about romantic comedies, romantic dramedies. I think that this one will probably come under by the time everybody's seen it. The way that the marketing that is interesting. They're having them go to like an Las Vegas chapels and sort of sit there through people's weddings and stuff. So that's going to be a fascinating one. So yeah, but I'm
Dude,
excited to just go and see Robert Pattinson and Zendaya. And you ready for this? Who's written the soundtrack for that movie for the drama? Daniel Pemberton, and he said
oh
that
wow.
whereas this one, Project Hail Mary, took him 2 months to film it and 2 years to work on it, apparently, the drama, he scored the whole thing for, like, 4 flutes, I think it was, and he managed to do it all in 1 day.
Dude,
So, it just shows you the life of a composer, how quick they can do certain projects and not others. But yeah, this has been
dude.
a great film hang, man. I've had the best time.
Yeah, this was awesome. Great job putting this together, Chris. We're going to let everybody know if you have not followed us already at the Film Hang on Instagram. That's where we share. Chris actually has been doing a really awesome job with posts that are film history and craftsmanship related. So we do not only do these once a week. Chris loves to put a lot of time, as well as I, into making education accessible in this community available to everybody. We will announce if we're going to do the drama sometime this week. So make sure to like and subscribe. These are also free on Filmmakers Academy. If you don't know, I actually started this last year a free film community group known as Office Hours, which is here on Filmmakers Academy platform.
Great.
You do not need to be a member to join. These are in a Zoom call. It's filmmakers around the world talking projects, cinema, stuff just like this. What are you making? How can we help you? And yeah, we really love these calls. And Chris, I'm super excited for the next one.
Me too. Yeah.
All right,
It's
y'all.
been awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for everybody who commented. You've been amazing.
All right, over and out. See you on the next one.